What if Bella became Damon's friend? Part 3. ELPOV. Waking up today, I was in better spirits. After talking with Stefan, my nerves were calm and him helping with Jenna was something I'd always be grateful for, but then again Jenna wouldn't be hurt if I just left Stefan alone, but that seemed to be a sign of defeat and I was most definitely not going to give Catherine the satisfaction of a victory. Once I rolled out of bed, I headed straight for Jenna's room to help her, but she swatted me off, arguing that she wasn't an invalid. She had to go top her doctor's appointment at 10:30 in order for the doctor to check the wound, so I'd woken up early to make her breakfast. I'd expected Jeremy to still be sleeping, but apparently he'd already gotten an early start, weird even for him. So now I was downstairs alone, making really oddly shaped pancakes, but at least they tasted good, and not bragging or anything, but Jenna couldn't judge because she couldn't cook to save her life. Once I was done, I poured some orange juice in a glass, served the pancakes and placed the sliced strawberries in a plate next to the pancakes, laying them on the plate ready for her. A sigh of contentment passed my lips and was going to make my coffee, but paused when hearing her slow footsteps enter. "Oh, I feel so much better after that shower." She came in through the doorway and gasped when seeing the breakfast I'd laid out for her. "You made breakfast for me?" She smiled. When sitting down on the chair, I pushed the plates forward to her reach before answering her. "Doctor's orders, you need the carbs, protein and vitamins," giving a soft smile. She clutched her stomach as she shifted in her chair and I felt the pain. This was my entire fault and I was trying to do everything I could to make up for what I caused. I got too involved and I was in too deep to even let go of the world I'd entered. I was too selfish to let Stefan go. The squeak of the chair caught my attention and I was thankful for that sound. "You baby me too much." She sat down and I sat next to her, my hands on the table wanting to make sure she ate it all. "What, you want to feed me too?" she teased, popping a strawberry in her mouth and grinned. I grabbed one from the plate before she could swat my hand away before getting up and making my coffee. "Did Jeremy tell you where he was headed today?" "No, I didn't even know he was gone. I thought it was like against the emo rules to be out in the sunlight." She joked and I smirked at her joke. "Wow, that's a first for him. Must be a girl," she concluded, still eating. "How are you feeling?" I asked again, even though I'd asked when I went to wake her. She rolled her eyes as she stabbed at her pancakes. "Stop worrying, Elena. It's not your fault," she scolded me, and I crossed my hands and cocked my head to one side, allowing her to see the worry in my eyes. "Worry lines quicken, you're aging," she teased, and I rolled my eyes but couldn't help laughing at her. I was about to scold her again for not answering me, but we were stopped with the opening of the door. "Must be Jeremy." How wrong I was. In came Matt surprisingly with a cheery expression on his face, holding up a brown paper bag, and I could smell fresh pastries as he crossed over to us. "Morning." He smiled at me, then smiled at Jenna too before looking at me again. "How's the patient?" "The patient is fine and can talk for herself," Jenna growled in frustration. "You guys are suffocating me." She sighed and picked up her empty plate ready to wash, but Matt shook his head and grabbed it, taking on the task for himself after handing me the brown paper bag full of goodies. I sighed appreciatively when I took a bite from the chocolate donut. After Jenna got over the anger directed towards Matt's protectiveness, she took the donut I offered her. Pouring another coffee, I handed it to Matt after he finished washing the plate. "Thanks for this." "No problem," he said before drinking his coffee. "What brings you here this morning?" Finishing off my donut and drinking more of my coffee, he placed his cup on the counter before answering with ease, "Well, I've got a day off and I thought you might need the help taking her to the doctor's." He wiggled his eyebrows, then inclined his head towards Jenna, who perked up when hearing Matt's reply. "Why?" "'Cause I'd try and make a run for it," Jenna questioned, her eyebrow hitched. "I wouldn't put it past you," Matt answered, and I smirked at him as I'd shared the same line of thought. She got up with an aggravated sigh and began to walk limp off, but I reached for her quickly, grabbing her arm to steady her, but she angrily swatted me away. "Elena, I need to go to use the bathroom. You want to wipe my ass too?" she snarled at me. "Jenna, I am just worried about you." "What if it was me? Wouldn't you be worried?" Trying to turn the tables onto her. As I expected, remorse and guilty etched her features, replacing the anger. Now I feel guilty because it's my selfish reasons that had placed her into this situation. She patted my arm with the one that wasn't holding her wounded stomach as she explained her side. "Of course I would be. I am sorry. It's just I feel bad because I am supposed to look after you, she rambled, showing an apologetic yet exasperated expression. Holding her gaze, we family, we look after each other. Walking back to Matt, I hopped up on the counter, grabbing another donut before nudging his shoulder. Have to talk to the others? I asked. He shook his head, wrinkled forming on his forehead before answering in a matter-of-fact tone. No, I haven't heard from any of them today. Me neither, I whispered before casting another glance at my phone to check for any missed calls, but was surprised when there was none. The last time ID had talked to them was last night in the hospital once Jenna had fallen asleep. I wonder where everyone else was. XXXXX. DPOV. Silence took the place, everyone simply watching the other as we waited in the brightly lit room of the parlor. It was getting kinda boring really sitting here, waiting while the silence seemed to make the situation more awkward. Where is she? Alaric questioned, breaking the lengthened silence withholding the tangible tension. His patience had reached its peak as had everyone else's. The thump of the ball on the far wall was slowly driving them crazy and ID ignored their multiple requests shouts for me to stop. Truthfully it was maddening me too, but it was always fun to wind them up. I threw it again, holding out my hands expectantly waiting to catch it again, but a quick hand was faster than me as it caught it in midair when it was coming back. Her slender fingers wrapped around the soft blue ball, her perfectly manicured nails dug into it. My eyes quickly darted to her face. She smirked at me before flinging the ball back at me with vampiric speed, and I returned the smirk. After yesterday, I felt we'd taken a stepping stone forwards, but after Catherine's fucked up revenge plan, we didn't get a chance to talk and discuss about so was that a step backwards landing right where we were before. What you all lounging around for? Her smirk grew wider knowing we'd all been waiting for her, and her comment had annoyed them more, which amused me too. She glanced around the room, her eyes only flickered to my form for less than a second before looking away. Shall we get started? Sarcasm in Jeremy's voice, rolling his eyes. Glancing at Issa, I drank in her stunning appearance as usual. She had a black lace crop top that enabled me to catch a glimpse of the black lace bra underneath, so I had to bite back my groan. Oversized sunglasses, hand on the scoop neck, around her neck was the hard-layered necklace, and on top she wore a light blue denim jacket, the sleeves rolled up to his elbows. Her jeans were a darker denim color and hugged her curves, showing off her voluptuous hips and red wedge boots. Her hair was under a black wool derby, making her look more adorable as she looked at us under the hat. Yes, I think we should. Issa sighed, her red lips in a soft pout, crossing her legs as she placed herself on the edge of the arm of the chair. Her fingers fiddled with her silver ring on her finger as she waited for us to begin. I stood up from the couch, placing the blue ball on the table next to mine before crossing the room to move closer to her. She seemed to shrink in her seat with my approximately, and I tried to mask the pain that stung my heart. I knew I deserved her rejection and more. Why are you here again? She pointed at Jeremy, who just glared at her. Aren't you like 14 or something? She was purposefully patronizing him to wind him up. He took one step towards her. 16 actually, he snapped back. That doesn't make me feel better, she mused. But you Rhea Gilbert, and I know all about you Gilbert men, she teased him, standing up from her chair as she scanned our library. And what exactly is it that you know? Jeremy challenged, and Issa turned to him with a quirked eyebrow. Disbelief tainted her eyes. That you very persistent, she murmured before moving back from the bookcase and turning to face the group. What are we waiting for? She questioned our silence. For you, Stefan said it as if the fact was obvious, but the meaning seemed lost to Issa as she cocked her head to one side. She rolled her eyes before crossing her arms reluctantly and began to order us around. We already went over everything briefly, but let us just double check some, nodded. Others answered in their agreeing silence. Bonnie, have you learnt the spell? She nodded and Isabel seemed satisfied. Stefan, she'll obviously come and pester you, so keep her busy while Bonnie goes to set up the room, she reminded him, who simply nodded in confirmation. Jeremy seemed to perk up with this, standing straighter before adding, I'll go with Bonnie if you like, he not so subtly put out there, and Isabel chuckled softly to herself, amusement in her eyes before she nodded. Well, you have to do something, she smiled knowingly. We all knew about his schoolboy crush on the Bennett witch. Caroline, she called for Blondie's attention, with a snap of her fingers, who turned then rolled her eyes. Lure her into the room, got it? But what if I am not as convincing? She fretted, but Issa didn't see it a problem like we did. Fire flared in her brown eyes as she menacingly growled, then I'll drag her in there myself. Her eyes were dark, casted onto the wall, but I was sure she wasn't really looking. Wait, what am I doing? Alaric asked in a worried panic. Her eyes danced with amusement. You'll be a good little vampire slayer and take care of your girlfriend and keep Elena away from the masquerade, she instructed, her voice patronizing. Alaric shook his head in reply with the realization of his lack of action. He followed behind her, hot on her trails, before raising his voice to argue, you can't expect me to just stay behind and do nothing. His eyes wide and ready to fight, but all knew it was a lost battle against Isabel. She turned around to face him and poked at his chest while talking back at him in hidden anger. That is exactly what you'll be doing. She gave him a look that caused him to back up from her. If Elena is found in that party, Catherine won't hesitate to harm her, kidnap her even so. If you want your head to stay intact, I think you should do as I say. Her eyes were feral, full of her fierceness and determination. The look was admittedly kinda hot. Alaric was clever enough to keep his mouth shut as he resigned, taking a small step away from her. She seemed pleased with his defeat before turning away slowly. Damon, you with me? She avoided my eyes, which I found to be annoying. Her words to me were said this in a slow manner. Her back was to all of us as she drank my scotch from the crystal bottle. If it had been anyone else, I'd have pinned them by the wall by now, but this was Isabel. She sighed from the bitter taste before continuing on with my orders. We'll keep an eye out on Stefan at the party, and if she tries anything, we'll take her down. Simple as. She drank some more before turning around to face us, then her heated gaze finally locked with mine as she stepped towards me, her steps slow and menacing. You do understand that once you and there's no turning back, right? She questioned, not leaving my locked gaze. We killing Catherine tonight? She gritted her teeth, the inferno burning brighter in her eyes. Keeping her gaze, I replied calmly, but the annoyance seeped into my voice. I understand that. No, you don't. She was now pressed up against me, her face only inches from me. Her flushed skin made me want to grab her, push her onto the wall and kiss her senseless, but I wrestled with that want because I knew it wasn't the right time. We're going to do everything we can to make sure the girl you've been pining over for over 100 years, to be dead. Do you understand that? A glassy look glazed over in her eyes and I caught the flash of fear in them before it disappeared. Fear? Fear for what? I understood what she was implying. She didn't want my emotions getting in the way. My thoughts went back to my so-called birthday when I'd pushed Catherine off, stopping Isabel from killing her. I could see how this would be seen in her perception. This was why she was acting like this. She had her doubts over my commitment to Catherine's death, and I knew her qualms were as completely justified with what I'd done. I understand, was my whisper to her. Her heavy breathing warmed my lips with her proximity. She swallowed, sounding a gulp. Her gaze flitted to my lips before she darted her tongue out to moisten her bottom lip, still staring at my lips before flickering her gaze back to my eyes, then stepping back while shaking her head. I'll see you all later on, she dismissed us. Her voice was rough, scratchy even as she went back, finishing off the rest of my scotch, and without another word, she walked out of the room and out the door, and all I could do was watch. All I wanted to tell her how much I missed her, not just being intimate with her, but I missed my best friend. She'd lost the fire that she once held, her quirky charm, her constant sarcasm and use of jokes in forms of insults, especially on my part. I wanted her to understand how much I needed her, how much I loved her. She knew me better than anyone, inside and out, as I knew her, and that was all I cared about. Us. Soon she would know how much she meant to me. I had to tell her. Someone cleared their throat, breaking my stare from her exit and turning to the source of the sound. I'd even forgotten there were any people in the room. BPOV. Once I was miles away from the Salvatore house, I released the breath I'd been holding. My breathing was heavy, my chest raising and falling profoundly as I balanced myself on the white bark in the middle of the forest. Being here reminded me of the dream, the memory. Who'd have known that would be the last night that I would seen my family, the family I'd fought so hard for to keep on living, but instead I ended up dying instead of being saved. Leaning back onto the bark, I slid down to sit on the consequently dampened earth. Closing my eyes, I was filled with the images of that night. crying over Juliana's body running through the forest, jumping into the river, sinking and swimming and sinking, the shadows being lifted out of the water with ease and laid onto the shore, warm metal-tasting liquid forced down my throat, the brief piercing burn in my throat, staring into coal-black eyes that withheld regret before he snapped my end. Snapping my eyes open, I tore away from the blaze of the consummating memories. Returning to the shattered humanity always lead to the manifestation of the physical and mental pain. Standing from the ground, I decided I was calm enough, so I began to walk back to the main road. My feet trudging on the path that was leading back to Mrs. Flowers. Right now I needed to sleep, some rest might just do me good, but there were other matters that I needed to handle. Once I merged from the forest and into the open road, I came to a decision of what I wanted to do first. Being alone with my thoughts, my mind trailed straight back to Damon. I wanted to kiss him. I wanted to touch him again. We moved forwards yesterday and I was so close into sealing his forgiveness before the announcement of Catherine's revenge. I wanted him so much, but it was fear. Fear stopped me from telling him the unsaid. Fear kept ruling my life, fear of being vulnerable, fear of my humanity. But with everything that has happened and the dream that I had, I realized that it was my humanity that made me who I was today. It was this thinking that led me to my new decision of what to do first before I would place my full concentration on tonight's ongoings. XXXXXX. Raising my fist to the door, I dropped it and paced up and down the porch, his scent masking the surroundings. Placing myself back in front of the door again, I seized my courage and knocked. I can do this. I can do this. I can do this, I muttered under my breath before shaking my body. Out with the bad, in with the good. Light footsteps ascended towards the door before it was flung open, and to my surprise, revealing a skimpy peppy cheerleader type of girl in her dark blue pajama shorts and white tank top. Of course this was happening, of course I was never enough, of course he was just like every other guy. This was reminding me of Damon and Elena, and the pain grew immense as I shook my head in refusal of my fucked up luck. I knew it. I growled in anger, backing away from the porch, and almost began my run when I heard J's voice shout for me. Isabel, Isabel, where are you going? He called to me, and I turned around to unleash my well-deserved anger at him in a scream. You were just like the rest. The release of the scream seemed to relieve me from the weighing of my blazed anger. It was liberation to have the ability to relive some of my rage, but it was not enough. He reached for me when I turned to run, his arms trapping me, but I began to punch his chest repeatedly while prying away from his strong hold. Once I was free from his firm grasp, I began to stomp away from him, wanting to escape the torment inflicted in my chest with his betrayal. That's my sister. I froze in my steps with his words and slowly pivoted on my ankles to face him. His sister. He just said sister. She's my sister, his voice becoming calmer, seeing as I was willing to listen instead of attempting to run away again. Searching his eyes for the distrust to fill my doubts, but I only found complete honesty, and I knew he wasn't lying, but it didn't stop me from questioning it. How do I know you aren't lying? Part of me wanted it to be real that he had cheated, so I felt slightly okay with what I'd done for him. I knew it was wrong to feel like that, but I couldn't help myself. He walked to me, reaching up to wipe away the tears before giving a small smile, then took my hand in his and pulled me back towards his home. Casting a glance over his shoulder, I saw her, a shy expression as she bit her lip and gazed towards us worriedly with guilt. From here, I could identify the similarities to him. Her hair was the same shade of brown, although hers wasn't curly but instead placed in pigtails. They also shared the same blue eyes color. I already knew what I needed to know. I believe you, I whispered in a croaky voice. He stopped, turning to face me as he cupped my face, holding me so I could lock gazes with him. I would never do anything to hurt you, his eyes searing with his fierce honesty, and I trusted him, which made this harder, and I felt guiltier for all the pain that I'd caused for him. I attempted to block out the memories of biting him and using him for my own amusement, but I knew it was time to put an end to it all. Wait here and don't move, I compelled him, and he followed my compulsion, freezing on his footing and gazing into the open space, into nothingness. Walking towards his sister, she seemed to sense fear as she stumbled back. Listen, I am sorry to cause any trouble. JJ promised I could visit for Thanksgiving instead of going to Mom's and her crazy. You will forget I was ever here. You never met me, and now you gonna go back inside the house and continue with your life. I was happy with the result when she turned without a doubt and entered the house. Come, Jay, I ordered, and he moved mechanically back to me, stopping right in front of me, the dazed expression still stuck on his face. Pushing back any more tears, I tried not to stammer over my last words to him. "You were so special," sighing with the beginning of my Oscar-winning speech. "You were funny, kind, sweet, loving, and you deserve so much better." It was my turn to grasp his cheeks between my hands, trapping his gaze with mine. Silent tears were falling now and I couldn't stop them. "You deserve better than me," I whispered. "A life with a human girl that will treasure you for the great person that you are." Wiping away my tears so I could see him clearer without the blur of my vision. "I want you to forget me. I want you to erase me from your mind and keep living your life. You will find your one true love and she will be your everything." But still not enough. My words were stern with promise. On my tiptoes, I gently laid my lips on his once more. His eyes fluttered closed with the whisper of a kiss, but I pulled away before he could reciprocate. "Goodbye, Jay." I was gone before he could open his eyes. BPOV. After leaving JS, the guilt burden that I weighed seemed to lessen now that I knew he was free. I would miss him, but I was right for him because I didn't love him or feel anything for him. He deserved better, way better than anything I could even attempt offering. With the masquerade coming on tonight, I needed to clear my thoughts to be in the right state of mind of ridding the other burden that was Catherine. My next stop was the Salvatore boarding house. To talk to Damon. Here I was again, coincidentally outside a door, and funny enough struck in fear before talking to yet another guy the first get tangled up with. I felt like I was crossing things off the bucket list before dying, and his situation itself amused me. It was time for me to face up to myself and everything that I'd tried to bury inside with the use of a hopeless switch. Knocking on the door, I waited for ascending steps, but nothing came. Silence was all that came from the other side of the door, and I knocked again with a more firm tap. Still nothing. Pushing the door, I wasn't really surprised when it opened. Only someone stupid would break into a vampire's home. "Damon," I called with uncertainty, but I already knew he wasn't there. Stepping inside, I decided for now, I would get my suitcase that I'd left in his bedroom. Once I was on the landing, I froze, my palms itched, my head raced as I stared into the spot that held the blackened memories of that night. It was a struggle to walk towards Damon's room as my chest ached with the close proximity of the day. My whole world felt like it crashed down onto me. The feelings of that night now caught up to me, freezing me to where I was, but I fought against them and ran quickly into Damon's room. Looking around the room, my suitcase was on the far corner, never having moved, but on the bed, I caught sight of was that it was. Reaching out, I picked up my blue tank top hat I'd worn the first time I arrived in Mystic Falls. What was it? Why had it been on Damon's bed? Needing to quicken my pace, I threw the top into the small suitcase and hauled it downstairs, avoiding contact with my surroundings. When I was downstairs, I walked towards the door, but before I could leave the house, I caught sight of the parlor, so instead of leaving immediately, I rested the suitcase on the floor next to the door and walked in, heading to the bookcase, searching through the titles that were gradually collecting dust, hoping to find a classic that I could borrow and forget about the screwed up life that was going on around me just for a few hours before getting ready for tonight. I passed the H section and continued down, but paused. Was I thought it was? Did I see what I thought I saw? Moving back a slow, cautious step, then looking closely again, I was met with the clarification of my assumption. Blinking away, hoping it was a mistake, my sight still zoned into the gold-printed lettering that read Isabel in an italicized style on a rich dark chocolate leather book. Who would I actually already had an idea on the who, but what would be in it? Gently, I grasped the brown spine, delicately pulling it from the shelf, pulling it face front onto my palm. The face of the book also had my name in a bolder gold font, and instead of the italicized style, this time it was capitalized. Reaching up instinctively in want of tracing my name, I found that my fingers were shaking tremendously. My whole body seemed to also quiver, my chest heaving, and my breathing was hitched. Should I open it? What if this ended up like Pandora's box and bite me on the ass? The task of turning the cover appeared to be almost impossible as the fear crippled my thoughts, preventing me from thinking clearly. What if it was something personal and private? Then again, it did have my name on it. Get a grip, Isabel. Closing my eyes to take a deep breath, I collected the courage I felt, and with trembling fingers, I unraveled the cover by pulling away the thick brown string around it to bound it, but found myself frozen again. Next was just opening it. Just turn the page, I muttered angrily to myself, but it only seemed to get my grip on the cover to tighten. It all seemed to sound better in my head, and I could but only imagine myself opening the book if only my body would cooperate. Fuck, it was frustrating, and I felt myself becoming more enraged. If I could handle killing 6 vampires under 5 minutes, I could handle opening a boo. The idea popped into my mind, hitting me, knocking me into sense, and I almost kicked myself for not thinking of it sooner. Walking to the table, I placed the closed but untwined leather-bound book onto the surface. Reciting the spell, the reformed Latin mixed with Theban witch lingo. The book shuddered slightly on the table, then the cover flung open as if hit by a gust of wind, my eyes immediately locking onto the first page, and froze as I read the short poem. La Vita Nuova, in that book which is my memory. On the first page, that is the chapter when I first met you, appear the words, "Here begins a new life." Dante Alighieri. I remember this poem I'd given the Italian author's poems collection to Damon to borrow after he took me to the garden. I can't believe he kept it all these years. Curiosity grew stronger than the fear, and I quickly grabbed the book off the table, forgetting about the spell, and my fingers grew frantic as they flipped through the pages, my breathing growing heavier as I finally found the truth about the content. He kept them all. The words unconsciously left my lips in barely a whisper, which became lost in the empty atmosphere. All of them, I added in a more hysterical voice as the realization of his actions dawned on me. I can't believe he kept them all. My tone had quietened back into a murmured whisper as it again faded into the empty atmosphere. The simple leather-bound book was full of all my letters. Not just the ones from last year, but also the ones I'd written in 1864. Every single one. The 12th of January 1864. Do you remember me, or am I a lost memory to you? Your absence seems to lengthen with every second, and I wish I could have you next to me once more. To have you encase me in your arms. To have your lips on yours once more. Just the very thought of you makes my blood boil, and thoughts that don't belong to a lady's mind to fill my mind. Sometimes I worry that you've actually forgotten about me, but something in your eyes when you were with me told me that I should trust you. Abruptly, I shut my mind off, stopping the intake of the tears threatening to fall, then moved on to the next one. Letters on this paper seemed blurred slightly, probably from my tears, and as I fingered the wet patches, I could recall the night I had been writing the letter in the dim candlelight while staying at the shelter. To ND March 1864. Will I ever be hearing from you again? The darkness seems to have engulfed me now that I can't think of anything else apart from your return. If you return. Another pale blue blotch followed, and I fingered that part of the paper again. I could remember the fear and the pain I'd been feeling, and I could almost see it between the lines and in the smooth curves of the letters and the punctuation. Turning the page again, I caught the middle of the 19th of July 1864, more tear-stained letter. If I did something to offend you, I only wish for your respect for a fellow human being, in granting me an explanation as to why you do this to me. Why you kill me with your absence, leaving no reason as to why I deserve this. Stop breaking me, stop hurting me. Tracing the moistened parts of the page in recollection of that night, the dulled pain I'd buried began to taunt me as it played itself on my chest, so I quickly erased it from my mind. Flicking forwards, then landed on yet another letter. This time it was dated in the 6th of December 1976, which was a letter after I'd crossed paths with him again and forgiven him after seeing he couldn't remember why he hurt me or how, but I did guard myself, telling him I wasn't ready for physical actions. Salvatore Sweetness. I had to pause and laugh at that, remembering how I used to tease him with that name, and I could remember his nickname being Sexy Swan. For some reason the recall of the name brought my fingers to my lips as the name brought back memories of his lips onto mine. Parting the memory from my thoughts, I read on. I am glad the night's chivalry of writing letters has not passed. You should know that your replies have gotten me through studying medicine. Listening to the same lectures was like listening to Tony Orlando on repeat. With all this fun I am having, sarcasm, I was actually thinking of coming down to Melbourne because a certain little birdie told me my hubby was coming tonight. That's right. Rod Stewart will be performing, and you and I are most definitely seeing him. If you want my body and you think I am sexy, come on sugar, let me know. If you really need me, just reach out and touch me. Come on honey, tell me so baby. I'd written the lyrics to both our favorite song by Rod Stewart, and I hoped that would put a smile on his face when reading it. The thought brought a smile on my face thinking of his reaction. Memories of the Rod Stewart concert flooded me. How we met up at the concert amongst thousands. I caught sight of his raven hair but also hearing his husky voice sing "You Wear It Well." It was amazing how I could pick out his voice from the loud cheering of crazed fans. I can remember when we locked eyes when he heard me begin to sing along. I can remember how his black flared jeans and his Rod Stewart t-shirt which smelt of his heavy masculine natural scent mixed with the herbal soap. He had a comb-over hairstyle which was trending. His hair was longer, the black strands of his bands were moved to the side. I could remember his body behind me as his arms wrapped around me while we swayed to the music. Nearing footsteps halted my thoughts and I wiped away the tears that had blurred my vision before fumbling with the pages to close the book, quickly twining the bind before levitating it back to the bookshelf just as the door opened. "Thank you witchy juju. Honey I am ho." He stopped when catching sight of me. "What's wrong?" His once happy-filled eyes were now solemn with great worry and it hurt me further. Sniffing didn't help and neither were my involuntary actions of wiping my eyes once again. Quick as a flash, Damon blurred before me and cupped my face. His finger, gentle as they grazed my jawline, the worry seemed more vivid with his close proximity. "Please tell me," was his sorrow-filled voice as his eyes bore into mine, the vulnerability exposed to me. Seeing him like this reminded me of the letters and I turned my head away, causing him to drop his hands away from my face. No was not the time. If I wanted to complete my task tonight, I needed to be free of any distractions. Turning my back to him, I tried to compose myself with several deep breaths before walking over to retrieve my duffel bag. With one more final breath, I turned to him, hoping the mask of a smile in place would be enough to allow my escape from him. "You need to change in your tux." I forced the smile that played on my lips as I smacked his chest playfully. I attempted to leave but of course that wasn't enough as he grabbed me and pinned me to the wall. A few strands of his raven black hair fell down his face as he glared at me but the worry was still prominent in the icy blue pebbles. "Stop running from me," he gritted through his teeth and turned away, not strong enough to hold his gaze anymore. "Not from me." His tone was gentler now and I felt him close in because his minted breath overwhelmed me. I froze when his body hit on my shoulder before his nose raked slowly up my jawline and he inhaled my smell. "Stay," he breathed into my ear softly. "Stay with me," he clarified tenderly. Shaking my head lightly, I gripped his shirt but he perceived it in the wrong way as he pressed a kiss on my exposed shoulder and with a rapid thought, I acted on instinct, pushing him away from me, causing him to stumble. Avoiding his eyes I quickly whispered in a haste, wanting to leave, "I'll see you tonight," before walking off. Once I was outside, I leaned on the door, allowing the penetrating rain to drench me as I slid down the wall. My fingers reached up to touch the tingling burning sensation on my shoulder where I felt he demarked. XXXXXX. Before going back to the house, I decided to stop by the mall with desperate need of an outfit for tonight. It was strangely teenageresque for me. I needed some normalcy for a while and hopefully some typical teenage girl activities would do me some good. Slowing down the speed, I watched the needle point lower and I came to a halt right next to the entrance of the main mall. Parking my bike next to a teenage boy talking on his phone, who then began to gawk at my baby, making me roll my eyes. "Is that a Harley-Davidson 883 Roadster?" he asked, ignoring the person shouting over the phone for his attention, and remained gaping at the bike. "With 105 horsepower?" he asked, his eyes becoming wider. He then turned away from the bike for a second to glance at me, then doing a double take to now stare at my face. 108 actually, I replied with a bored expression while walking towards the entrance, but before entering I added without looking back, "If any of you touch my bike, I will castrate you." Of course I didn't mean it literally, but it helped keeping him away from my bike. The Mystic Falls Mall was surprisingly pretty big as small town malls go. There were probably about 20-25 different shops in the 2 floors that it had. It was filled with almost half the town probably doing the same thing as me, finishing touches to their outfits for tonight. Looking at my phone, I saw it was 11:22, which left me with enough time to find my dress and then feed and then go to the party and kill the she-devil. I wasn't a greatly enthusiastic shopper, so I would only limit my time to half an hour, just an in-and-out thing, so that had been an attribute that I did withheld as Bella. I entered the first shop without looking at the name, as long as I saw the mannequins dressed in women's clothes, so I quickly began to flicker through the pieces as soon as I was in. Too short, too slutty, too pink, too puffy, too flowery, Actually it wasn't too bad. I picked it out of the collection and held it out to take a closer look. It was a silk and lace chiffon dress with a high neck and cut-out bodice, slightly ruffled at the bottom, which was a tulle train. Lacy set. It equals 50,684,145. I'd have to try it on to see if it was any good. I laid it on my arm and then looked through another section. You need any help? A chirpy saleswoman came up to me in a short yet elegant white dress. The situation with her presence brought back the memories of my recent dark time and me taking away a person's free will, which created a sore throaty voice as I grumbled, no thank you, before turning back to the collection, avoiding her. When hearing her retreating steps, I calmed more before I concentrated more on the clothes I was looking through. No way, hell no. Going away from that collection, I found another assortment with gowns. These seemed to accompany more of my style, with darker colors and slight designs that could emphasize some of my best features. Nearing the peak of my patience, I almost gave up but stopped when landing on another black dress. Like the other one, this one had a ruffled skirt, but this was different as it had a halter neck with shoulder straps and it acquired more of a free flare than the other, which would cling to my figure. But this one could help in insinuating my upper body. Masquerade black set. It equals 50683,179. That was also another option, so I placed that on my arm with the other and was debating whether to look some more or stop and prevent confusing myself further. Still, there could be some other dresses that could be perfect. Just as I was about to start scanning another set, I heard a cheery voice call my name. Well, her nickname for me, Izzy. I already knew who it was without looking. Hey Caroline, catching myself when I turned to her and was surprised to see her standing next to Bonnie, both with their handfuls of shopping bags. And Bonnie giving both of them a weak smile. I wasn't really in the mood to deal with other people, but for some reason I felt slightly happy that she'd even acknowledged me. Bonnie then returned a smile, but hers was tighter. Hey, she was going to wave, but bags weighed her down. Did you guys clear out a shop? Chuckling slightly at the sight of them with about 15 bags between them. Bonnie smirked. Can you believe only one of these bags is mine? She too joined in my laughs. A girl can never have too many clothes. Barbie tried to defend herself. What about you? Both glanced at what was on my arm and I held them both up for them to see. Oh wow, those are gorgeous, she complimented in awe. Yeah, have you decided which to take? No, not yet, but I still want to look, just in case. Just get both, Caroline quirked. Looking at both dresses, I felt exuberated and nodded. Bonnie seemed surprised by my reaction. You know what, why not? With my reply, Bonnie stalked forwards and took hold of the price tag of the first. $18.740. Her wide eyes were like saucers as she gaped at me. Caroline huffed and gave a patronizing roll of her eyes before answering. Well, of course, Bonnie, it's an Alexander McQueen original. Don't know who she is, but she does great work. How can you afford all this? I had a lot of antiques, so I sold them. Wow, so you really rich, like super rich. Caroline was impressed now, simply by my money status. Now I felt guilty for the clothes I'd stolen before when I wasn't in the right state of mind, you could say. Money isn't something I really care about. I gave most of it away. To people, some, but mostly to charity. That's really nice, I guess. Anyway, we're about to go to check out American Eagle Outfitters. You wanna join? It was surprising that Bonnie had invited me. Sure, let me just pay for these. Okay, Caroline replied with excitement sparkling in her eyes as she gave a slight hop. I turned around, shocked with the excitement I too was feeling before going to the cashier and paying for the dress. She placed them neatly before handing me the dresses, which were placed in their boxes with tissue before placed in my bag. She sent me off with a good afternoon and a smile, which I kindly returned when taking the bag of her. Walking back to them, I held up the bag, ready. We then walked in a rather awkward silence, but once we were in the shop, Caroline got into her crazed mode and me and Bonnie watched in entertainment as she moved like a mad cat around the store, picking and choosing different articles of clothing without barely looking at them, attracting a few stares. Her actions reminded me Alice, a girl who had become a sister to me, family to me. Well, come on, Bonnie said, and I followed her as we began to look at the evening dresses section. How are you doing, Bonnie? Pretty good, she simply answered, then pulled out a dress. This one's kinda cute, she commented. I glanced at the red floor length, off-the-shoulder dress briefly before taking it off her. Being new to the which stuff doesn't make someone pretty good mimicking her when reciting her answer. I remember my experience and it was not pretty good. Her interest had peaked now as she clung onto my every word while nodding slightly, which encouraged me to continue. You're in the middle of things and given this responsibility means you feel reliable for everything, and if something goes wrong you feel as if it's all your fault because there would been a spell for it and you could done something. That's exactly how I feel, she whispered in surprise with my understanding of her feelings. I know how it is to grow as a witch with no one around. It was confused turmoil at every turn as you don't know who to trust and what is in your morals. Did they like me for me or were they waiting to use me for my power? I only hoped I could offer a helping hand to Bonnie. Placing a gentle hand on her shoulder, I was elated when she didn't even flinch. A small smile on my lips as I carried on. It's okay to be scared, Bonnie. Being a witch is not something you just can be okay with. Does it get better, easier? Her eyes pleading as she desperately searched my eyes for the answer. Her question was one I had always asked myself. Yes, it does. She released a breath she'd been holding in relief. You become stronger and you will have more control in some ways, so yes, it does become easier trying to bring her mind to peace. She seemed more relaxed now, as if a burden had been lifted off her shoulders. She opened her mouth seeming unsure before finally adding, "You're so strong," her voice stern and serious, which made me laugh lightly. "As are you, Bonnie. Thank you for caring." She gave a soft smile. I could see the Emily in her. Not just physically but also in her loyalty, her fierceness and her love. She fought for those she loved, and that was something that should be credited too. "I am not your enemy." I hoped that would also erase any added-on worries that she had. Caroline ran over to us holding up the red one-shoulder draped dress with a small diamond crest on the side of the hip. It was short and the siren scarlet seemed to scream sexy now. She reminded me of Rosalie. "Hey, I found the one," she squealed with excitement. "Ooh, sexy," I complimented as I fingered the soft fabric and she nodded eagerly in agreement. "I am gonna go buy it." She ran off to the cashier. Bonnie leaned into me to whisper that's the sixth dress she's bought that she thinks is the one. She put finger quotes on the end as she rolled her eyes. We both laughed at Caroline before returning to the dress search. It was nice to be close to another witch. Not just a witch but another teenager who actually liked me. To have a friend and do the normal stuff like shopping. It was nice to have serene moments like this, ignoring the constant spiral of darkening thoughts. "Found anything you like?" "Oh, I already got my dress," she answered nonchalantly. "I bought the dress but never worn it, but seems perfect for tonight." That's cool. I paused when I caught sight of another option that wasn't too bad. Actually, it was pretty gorgeous. This time it was short, probably reached mid-thigh, with a boob tube style on the top, a sweetheart line which would make the girls look good. It gold studs which were on the panels which created layers on the bustier and on the sides. Midnight masquerade set. It equals 459803885. "That is really gorgeous," Bonnie complimented as she turned her head to look closely at the dress. "Ooh, you should get that," Caroline piped, jumping out of nowhere. It really was gorgeous. I especially loved the deep blue color. "What about the other dresses?" I asked. "Mystic Falls has many of these dances. Buying this would save time for later." "Guess so," I murmured more quietly. I hadn't really planned of staying in Mystic Falls any longer because of how complicated everything had gotten. "I'll just go pay for this." Then glancing at the black lace shoes Bonnie had been looking at, I went and picked them up. "And these?" She walked over to me, grabbing my arm to stop me as she began her protest. "You don't have to." I want to, moving the shoes away from her reach. I shook my head and quickened my pace towards the cashier. Walking back to them, I handed the bag with the shoes to Bonnie and she opened her mouth to thank me, but I raised a questioning brow at her which made her shut up and roll her eyes, but gave a friendly smile afterwards. We began to walk out, heading towards the exit, and I felt almost exuberated, like I was on cloud nine for a while, even with those few minutes of escaping reality. It wasn't long before Caroline broke not only the silence but my short-term high. "Are you bringing that guy Jay as your date tonight?" It was an innocent question, but I was afraid of what it would lead to. Bonnie perked with interest. "Who's Jay?" Apparently this was Caroline's forte as she brightened and began to fill in. "Bonnie, on my life. You know, when I bought my car from that really hot sales guy." Her eyes lightened with each second that passed as she talked about Jay, the hot sales guy. I really didn't want him to be brought up, not now. OJ. Bonnie turned to grin at me. Jay, when did you guys get together? Something dawned on her and her eyes glazed, turning serious. What about Damon? Caroline sent a panicked look at me while stammering over her thoughts, and when she saw my warning glare, she froze, keeping her mouth shut thankfully. The less people knew about the shit that went down the better, because I could not take any pity looks that would give reminders of that night. Is there something you not telling me? Bonnie turned to Caroline, her temper was raising now. It's not my secret to tell, she cringed with a stutter. I am sorry, but that's for Elena to tell you. I bit my tongue, holding down the urge to tell her everything. Elena was not my favorite person, but this was my own battle. I didn't need other people's sympathy. What has Elena got to do with Bonnie was having an epiphany right now, and I ignored as I kept walking to the shop. He kissed her, didn't he? I knew he'd do something like this. She gave an outburst. Her words put a halt onto me, and I turned around, balled fists as I glared at Bonnie, who took a small stumbled step backwards in fear. Why do you blame Damon? Why does everyone blame Damon? Her eyes widened in fear as she stumbled back, and the fright in her expression halted my anger, calming me slightly, and I squeezed my eyes shut as I breathed in deeply, trying to calm my erratic nerves before backing away. Fuck, I ran my fingers through my hair in defeat before adding, you know what, this is way too fucking high school for me. I backed away, feeling everything crushing down at that moment, and my sight blurred with tears. There's only so much I can take. BPOV. Once I entered the house, I used to be satisfied to find that Mrs. Vegetation wasn't interior, and all I found was her notice informing me that she'd gone buying and that my lunch became within the microwave. Bless that girl. However, all I surely desired was to scrub away these days. Forgetting the food, I ran upstairs to my room and stripped down. Losing my clothes to the bed, I wrapped my white fluffy towel round me with a mechanic motion, stalked toward the bathroom. Whilst inside, I leaned on the glass, allowing the ice-cold water to go away, a burning contact to my numb pores and skin. I used to be manner past being concerned proper now. It changed into a warfare in my mind as I attempted to suppress the fast mind of my crazed afternoon with Caroline and Bonnie, but I also couldn't help my mind wandering lower back to Damon's contact. His nose grazing gently up my jawline, leaving a burning trail on my pores and skin, the reminder were given me, accomplishing up to cup my jaw as I sighed into reminiscence. How he had left a sizzling mark on my shoulder in which his lips had in brief pressed on. His meek innocence as he pleaded in a whisper for me to live. How could I cope with anything this night if I couldn't even system anything? My mind appeared to be in a jumble, and I couldn't resolve every idea to recognize what turned into really going through my mind. Nothing could be deciphered, and that I attempted to drown out what seemed to be maddening screams wailing via my thoughts. With any luck, my hate for Catherine would get the whole lot working once more. I couldn't know. We could not have enough money to screw up this night, and even though I was scared to admit it, I used to be terrified that Damon might be the only to choke. It became almost sufficient for me to want to drop out of the complete plan. However, I knew that I was the only that turned into preserving them together. As egotistical as that sounded, it became genuine. If something went incorrect, I had to be ready to select up the pieces. I knew the only way go. Approximately the rest of this night changed into flip it off. However, I could not, even if I wanted to. Now that I would allowed myself to feel, the emotions had end up more potent than the transfer itself. DPOV. I fretted over my arise for this night more than regular because of the anxiousness of feeling worthy as I stood subsequent to the beauty that turned into Isabel. I used to be still not ready, nonetheless barefoot and most effective in my black in-shape trousers. It had been a difficult project to even put them on with the raging mind of Isabel and what should they brought on her to interrupt into tears. It was clear now that her partitions were damaged and she or he had became off the switch. Finding her on the sofa, tears helplessly trailing down her eyes have been a piercing bloodshot crimson, and the ache that distraught her students spoke volumes. Had she no longer been the kind to undergo her very own burden and ran away, I might have comforted her, but I wasn't even sure if she might have popular me. Seeing her so sad with the empty expression in her eyes changed into like a knife in my chest, and that knife twisted deep, knowing that she was jogging from me. I knew I harmed her and that I hated myself for it. Always will, and I could not change what took place. However, I ought to decide what could appear. There has been no manner I'd be giving up on Isabel. Walking to the small desk, I grabbed the white blouse hold on the again of the chair and shrugged into it, however simply as I commenced to button up. I heard the sluggish footsteps near the room and that I regarded up at Stefan, who entered the room in a comparable tux despite the fact that he opted for a black waistcoat below, geared up. He requested getting into the room, then taking of his coat to cling it on the opposite chair earlier than rifling through Alaric's duffel and pulling out one of the toys. He strapped at the device and strapped it round her wrist, after which, suspecting it before putting his coat back on. Hitching up an eyebrow, I peeked up at him with my cocky smirk that I knew annoyed him. "Do I look ready?" Finishing up my buttons before starting to polish my shoe. He shakes his head at me earlier than clarifying, "Are you prepared to kill Catherine?" Understanding what he intended, my smirk fell into a frown. It without a doubt turned into traumatic how all of us had little or no faith at the hatred that burned for Catherine. Even though I knew that they were all justified for his or her phrases, it didn't forestall the frustration. Composing my expression, I hitched an eyebrow at him earlier than turning the tables. "Are you prepared to kill Catherine?" I played and she shook his head, rolling his eyes. I notion he changed into leaving but turned into surprised when he paused at the doorway before bitterly including, "I am no longer the one who spent over 100 years looking for someone that didn't need to be found." His tone acidic earlier than strolling out of the room. His words tore me, however I knew the purpose was that I was effortlessly angered changed into the reality behind the words. The frustration triggered me to kick over the desk. The bag fell and the contents spilled over the ground. Because of my abrupt standing, the chair jerked, scraping the floor as it fell backwards. However, I used to be too indignant to care. The comfort of the discharge turned into too distracting. Glancing at the antique clock, I sighed in tries to calm myself earlier than I moved to the replicate. Grabbing my black tie, I tied it earlier than placing on my coat. Then I slipped into the black newly polished shoes. Searching at myself in the replicate, now that I used to be completed dressing, I felt nervous over my look for the first time. The motive at the back of it could be summed up in one phrase. Isabel. KPOV. This night became going to be my night. I concept as I looked at myself in the reflect, a arrogant smile on my face as I took in my appearance. The short tight black dress changed into virtually my style, but I wasn't too eager on the hair. However, it changed into simplest a little glitch. I ought to put up with the distressed teen look for a few hours. I suggest. Elena already had the Petrova fire in addition to being interested in the Salvatore, but all she wished become to undertake my sense of favor. Cautiously, I brought the black lace masks up to my face and felt Lucy grasp the ribbon to tie my returned. Giving her a grin at the reflect, she remained composed as she did the tie for me. Which is constantly so severe. I knew she failed to need to assist me, and the entire girlfriend aspect was just a mask. Only purpose she turned into doing this was due to the fact I stored her ass, and it had been my intention in spite of everything. There is no such factor as altruism. Stepping returned, she regarded me over, equipped. She asked as soon as she become finished. She then held up hers and that I helped her tying hers. Geared up. Of course I used to be, due to the fact, like I said, tonight was going to be my night. I would finally get what I deserve due to the fact I cannot have performed all that going for walks, given my lifestyles up for not anything. The moonstone would be mine and it can simply shop me. I fought for my lifestyles and there was nothing that could prevent me from keeping it. Having the moonstone would help in leveling out with Klaus. Tonight, I would subsequently placed Isabel in her place. Absolute confidence might she be assisting, however, seeing as Lucy become going to assist me by protective me from her attacks, I might be safe and he or she could be sorry. It might be easier for all and sundry in the event that they just relented, gave me what I want without going through the entire manner of threats and violence, and none of this would be a trouble. In retrospect, they just made everything hard for themselves. However, this night was all planned out and that I had 3 returned up plans, Lucy being certainly one of them. I knew Isabel and I knew she would retaliate, however her humanity would forestall her from looking humans get killed, so I should use that to my advantage. Even the mere idea of her call angered me. She needed to be taken out of the equation due to the fact she turned into complicating everything. Isabel had to be kicked down a notch, and I am hoping that Lucy could assist me in making this easier for me. Killing her might be hard, that plenty I will admit, but if I simply determined her weakness. Her weak point. XXXXXXX. DPOV. We arrived at the celebration but split up, now not wanting to elevate Catherine's suspicion as further. I wandered down to the casual jazz tune gambling at the dance floor that became installation out of doors. In want of a drink, I grabbed a flute filled with champagne and scanned the location. The whole lot become going to planned up to now. Bonnie and infant Gilbert have been upstairs setting the entirety up. Barbie was doing her aspect well, not but she could be. Alaric became at home, in which he was alleged to be, however the handiest character lacking that I cared about became Isabel. She was overdue, and every second that passed without seeing her turned into excruciating, but I was hoping the lackluster alcohol would help in dulling, however the bland flavor did not burn my mouth, distracting me from my wistful thoughts. Couples swayed to the track whilst I grasped by way of the bar, continued to go looking the room time and again in case I missed her. Sighing deeply, and not using a victory, I turned and ordered something stronger, scotch possibly. The bartender were given on with making my drink in an insufferable gradual tempo, and that I gritted my enamel in frustration to prevent myself from shouting at him. Finally, he grew to become and slid the glass over to me. I downed the glass in a hurry and indicated for a replenish. He gave me a wondering appearance, however at least he turned into smart sufficient to now not voice his thoughts as he reluctantly turned to fix some other. Jaw clenched, my muscle tissues hunched beneath my fisted hands at the counter as I waited. It seemed to take him longer this time, and simply as I was approximately to hurry him, someone tapped my shoulder, and that I became, an audible gasp caught in my throat because the female earlier than me driven up her black lace mask to her newly burgundy hair to capture my stare with the warm chocolate brown eyes. Oh wow, this changed into no longer what I was organized for, a long way from it. The sheer black halter neck dress had an fashionable yet sexy detail with the way it clung to her higher frame, emphasizing her breasts, however then the corset fashion waist brought about the ruffled organza skirt that fell to the ground. Her dress changed into accessorized with a series and crystal silver coronary heart necklace on top of her lapis lazuli necklace. To mention Isabel changed into searching beautiful could be a sarcasm of the century. She regarded just like the epitome of sex within the seductive vampiress get dressed she wore. My body become already alerted with need because of how irresistibly tempting she regarded. The whole thing in me wanted her, every fiber of my being wanted to rip that dress open and have her. Manipulate became at loss as I gazed up at her face. Her lips had been now covered in that blood-crimson lipstick and her lashes appeared longer. Her hair had lost its natural brown but changed into now smooth claret, a lustrous wine pink, falling down her shoulders in layers of curls contrasting along with her delicious gentle pale creamy pores and skin. Always loved you in a healthy, she broke me out of the spell, handiest she may want to region me beneath. How had I been so oblivious to her secretive sexiness, her purity, but additionally her risky splendor, her shyness that changed into confined together with her wildcat self-belief. She changed into the whole lot. The whole thing to me. It took a few moments earlier than words got here into my mind in response to her teasing. You look wow, you simply appearance, so words escaped me as no description regarded to in shape the splendor that she become. How I craved her contact, how I craved to the touch her, to maintain her, to kiss her. Issa didn't seem to appreciate the silence as her eyes solid downwards, biting her bottom lip in nervousness which constantly elicited the maximum dangerous of emotions in me, and before I may want to restrain myself, the three simple words left my lips. I am hoping the ending of that sentence is high quality, she played with a tug of her lips lifting into her smirk. Before I could compose a response, I determined towards assuring her due to the fact we both knew she became awesome. As an alternative my mind worked in rapid forward as I held my palm outstretched in the direction of her. Dance with me, expecting her to turn me down and make an excuse, approximately blending business for satisfaction, but I used to be amazed when she gave a grin in response before lacing her palms onto mine. Our fingers pressed up together and the fire appeared to burn fiercer with the skin contact. BPOV. The simple gesture of taking his hand seemed to maintain an underlying double meaning. Having his palms lace with mine felt heavenly, his thumb stroking over my ski as he held me tighter as if he turned into afraid to allow me cross, which I may also see in the disbelief in his eyes. He had probably predicted me to turn down his offer of dancing with him, however something approximately seeing him in a tux, there was simply something about Damon Salvatore in a tux nicely in anything but the tux well led simply say I allow my frame do the speak me instead of my logical thoughts. Florence and the Machine began to play through the surround speakers, overwhelming the dance ground with the sensual tango beat of I am now not calling you a liar, and that I saw how Damon's eyes sparkled with the temper of the music and his grasp of my hand tightened as he pulled me near him. I am now not calling you a liar, simply don't like to me. I am now not calling you a thief, simply don't steal from me. His body pressed up onto mine as our bodies moved in sync across the ground. His palms regarded to graze any uncovered pores and skin that he could discover, in each path he left made me grip him tighter and loosen up into him, placing my full agree with into him to manual as adequately. He then spun me away from him earlier than pulling me returned into his chest, and I felt myself sink into the song as my hands additionally explored him. Keeping my cheek pressed up onto his, I inhaled his delicious fragrance, biting my lip to prevent myself from the temptation of kissing his face. I may want to sense him breathe within the scent of my hair and then angle himself so he became buried within the nape of my neck. This new function stopped my undead useless heart, making it come across the beat, and I stiffened and felt him stiffen too earlier than enjoyable whilst he caught me loosen up too. He dipped me in that I may want to feel my frame pressed up against his thigh as my hands went behind me, I grazing the floor for a second, my lower back arched inside the dip, then lightly he delivered my body back up, and with that circulate, I hitched my leg up around his waist as he spun us each on the dance floor. Clapping from the target audience was distant as my eyes locked together with his ice blue ones, holding deep extreme emotion that he become unveiling for me to look. I could inform he changed into trying to reflect his feelings for me to look, however I failed to want to. As an alternative I laid my head on his shoulder and slid my leg down as I heard the track slowly float away right into a gradual one. Ready to leave, I began to walk away, however his fingers gripped my wrist, whirling me around back to his chest. His eyes bore into mine, pleading for me to stay. The world become on fireplace, no person may want to store me, however you. It's strange what desire can make silly humans do. The irony of Chris Isaak began to play on the dance ground, and it have been my imagination, however Damon's hands appeared to tighten around me as we waltz across the room. My head had involuntarily fallen on his chest as we waltzed beyond the opposite coupled dancers. His masculine cologne stuffed my senses, and realization of his closeness alerted my thoughts, the ache returning, and I pushed far away from him. I've never dreamed that I would meet anyone like you. We stood still, surely searching at every different, but our hands had been nevertheless joined. He had the most anguished expression I'd ever seen as he longingly gazed at me. My body longed for his over again, however I fought back the wishful wondering. I could not permit myself experience, because all that would infest will be the pain. Isabel, he breathed, the sound warming my coronary heart, strengthening the inevitable pull I needed to him. I felt as his thumb lightly stroked my inner wrist, but I failed to want that I didn't need to forgive and neglect. I would finished it earlier than, however I fell once more. Do not tearing my eyes far from him as I unwillingly pressured my mind to act on the flight action, but the pull fought lower back, looking me to step closer, so I remained conflicted as I stood nonetheless, now not transferring away but no longer moving nearer both. Please simply allow me, he paused as he caught me shaking my head in refusal. Tears stung my eyes, threatening to spill and launch my weak spot. Now wasn't the time for this, we needed to get shifting, but my nerves had frozen, retaining me in region. How am I able to show you? How can I explicit how sorry I am? How can I prove to you which you re the most effective as soon as I want? He stepped toward me and I felt his body press up against mine once more. My coronary heart soared with his near contact returning, and that I fought the urge to wrap my palms around him. He took it upon himself as he wrapped an arm around my waist, then took my now limp hand in his hand and started to move with the tune again. My frame complied. However, you healthy me better than my preferred sweater, and I understand that love is mean, and love hurts. However, I nonetheless take into account that day we met in December, oh baby. Lana Del Rey's gradual, sensual and barely seductive beat took over us, and we found our rhythm once more. I found myself trying to decipher the controversial emotions that were sparking in Damon's eyes as he held my severe gaze. I can love you till the cease of time. I would wait 1,000,000 years. Promise you may remember that you are mine. Toddler, are you able to see through the tears? We spun around the dance ground, weaving out of the other couples without difficulty as he led me with a firm hold close, whilst I watched closely as the feelings morphed into determination and Damon's mouth opened as it seemed he turned into going to say what he'd been taking into account over. Stopping on his tracks, I paused, seeing as he'd been leading. Clasping my hand tight, however changing his position so he should link our palms together. He appeared at once in my eyes. I like you. The simplicity of his defined confidence become nearly horrifying. Comprehension became misplaced on me as my erratic mind quickened their pace, developing less feel, and all I should think of was what changed into occurring right now. Why can I now not suppose right now? Heat breath caressed my lips as he leaned closer, his body become pressed again onto me so that I was able to sense the heat radiating from his body alongside the warmth that his breath launched. Softly, he inched nearer, simplest to graze his nostril along my jawline. I discovered that impatience was constructing in me along with his slow moves, and despite the fact that I knew I used to be playing with hearth, I couldn't locate the need to move away. The faint aroma of his cologne made him smell even more ravenous, and I ought to sense my remedy breaking in the feel that I was swaying closer to him. His arms added as much as my cheek started out to stroke the jawline earlier than he angled my eyes to stare back into him, his tongue dipped out moistening his backside lip. Simplest you, he whispered earlier than the electrical touch of his burning lips enclosing in mine befell. His moves have been mild but insistent, loving however possessive and raw with unfulfilled hunger. My eyelids fluttered closed and I depended on the feel of touch to experience the sensual feeling as his voracious tongue delving into my mouth with the sudden force to insatiate the need. And pressing tongue searched my mouth. The starvation had spiraled out of every person's control as he conquered me. His lips held the acquainted taste of mint of his toothpaste, scotch and white champagne. He was practically getting me under the influence of alcohol, no longer simply with the flavor. With its personal accord, my body answered as I raked my palms in his hair, permitting my nails to scrape his scalp, eliciting a moan from him and him to overwhelm me in the direction of him, molding our bodies together, protecting what became rightfully his. I should feel his hands graze my bare back that changed into exposed to him. However, even the skin he was already touching did not seem enough. The barrier of our clothes became irritating and I had to constantly remind myself we were in public. The alternate within the kiss conveyed the message he turned into seeking to show, which became that he desired me, he wished me similar to I desired and wished him. I believed him. His words were genuine, clear because the emotion he turned into now settled on. I knew he cherished me, that a whole lot become actual, but I additionally knew that he turned into in love with a person else, a person that seemed to be a part of him forever. I couldn't no would not be the second choice. I can refusing his frantic fingers that reached for me. Firmly, he took manipulate of the situation, greedy my hands to force me to stand him. No Isabel, you can. You can, he sounded determined, afraid to allow go, but we each wanted this to say goodbye. Me extra than him. No I can I am no longer sturdy sufficient. A sting prickled my eyes as the tears threatened to spill over, and despite the fact that I desired to escape from him, I could not understand why my fingers were fisting his shirt desperately and my yearn to be entwined along with his, my lips calling for his. Deliver me that hazard. Permit me try, he begged, his eyes darkening with grave unhappiness and unveiled pain. Become it to watch me in this country. Was it the reality that I was letting pass? What became happening right now? Ultimately, the energy and the courage returned as my fists commenced to conquer at his chest. No, the chant endured as I driven away from him with greater pressure, now looking to escape, ignoring his call for me to return. Turning far from him, my aspect collided with some other discern's frame and I snapped. My anger rose and that I felt the fangs extend, piercing my backside lip slightly, and I held returned the angered bloodlust that become delivered on with the burning feelings, but I felt the veins harden beneath my eyes as I bared my fangs, but while snapping my head up I was stopped up quick, staring immediately at my past's return. Silence rang loud in my ears as I regarded up into his grave golden eyes that seemed to lighten with recognition. Edward, ELPOV. Alaric got here in meal time. Fortunately he added dessert and his presence eased my worry about the nicely being of my friends, but he saved avoiding my gaze and that I should locate how rigid he become, usually checking his smartphone. My suspicions rose as I called Bonnie, who responded however quickly rushed through the communication giving a lame-ass excuse that she needed to go make lunch. Bonnie cannot cook dinner. I attempted Caroline, who absolutely omitted the call, and now Alaric. What was going on? Wonder where Jeremy went. Enticing Jenna in verbal exchange. She saved her gaze on the TV whilst answering casually. He texted me. Stated he turned into going to the Lockwood party. Now it changed into clean something turned into happening. Jeremy hated parties or large crowds, plus he hated dressing up in a tux. Jeremy. He went to that. I realize proper. Jenna chuckled. Nonetheless it's right. He wishes to lose some of that emo component. She smiled, biting into her pizza. I glanced at Alaric inside the kitchen, who fast diverted his gaze onto his task in the kitchen while catching my gaze. Narrowing my eyes and gave Jenna an excuse. I am gonna get more napkins. Alaric heard me coming and seemed up with a fake masked smile. What is going on? I do not know what you mean, he replied. I haven't heard from each person all day. It is like anybody's been keeping off me, and now Jeremy's supposedly at the birthday celebration. He hates stuff like that, I rambled, my anger developing together with his denial. I could see him wreck, and he rubbed his hand over his face before sighing in what I may want to best guess changed into defeat. I don't know what to inform you, Elena. Opening my mouth to mention something, his cell phone rang and we each eyed it. Speedy, I thought ahead and reached for the cell phone, but he grabbed it out of my reach, then placed it into his pocket. Narrowing my eyes at him once more, I casually delivered, so then it is going to be okay if I just head down, try and join up with anyone? My manipulative tone turned into emphasized as I moved to start on foot towards the exit, but I smiled when he grabbed my arm to stop me. Wait, he sighed again, a crease forming on his forehead. Elevating an eyebrow at him, I leaned on the counter. What are you hiding, Rick? Stefan requested me to preserve a watch on you, simply in case Catherine showed up whilst he became on the party, he replied, and his words stung me. Understanding the possibility of Catherine and Stefan being inside meters from each other. So Stefan's at the party too. He might in no way visit the celebration for himself, he did that stuff for me. My phrases had been barely a whisper as I stared off into nothingness. Just permit this one cross. Elena. I misinterpreted my sadness, wondering I'd simply stay. You are proper. I do not even need to be there. I performed up my sadness. As soon as an opportunity opened, I would be out of sight and on my way to that party. No way could I allow no longer best my pals but Jeremy too, to get harm. BPOV. Edward. I failed to assume this could get any worse, however I bet it can. The whole lot that I might been thinking before become erased from my thoughts. My fangs descended and that I felt my thoughts become immobilized, my limbs regarded to be held down by a few unknown pressure as I checked out my past. I compelled my body to transport, to run and get away from the entirety, however not anything passed off, and I bit my lip to prevent the incensed scream that tore through my lungs looking to be unleashed. Blinking numerous instances, I attempted to peer if this become a hallucination, however it wasn't. He become right here. Edward Cullen became right here. In Mystic Falls Masquerade. Whilst I was planning to kill a person. Why become this happening to me? Why now? Man, I had a few fucked up fate. Of all days for this to manifest, it had to be now. Why became he right here? Did he come back for me? My mind become going into spiral as I tried to grasp the fucked upon state of affairs I was in the meantime. Bella. His honeyed voice laced along with his kindness, which I could always become aware of in his eyes. I now found had been no longer gold, they were a pitch blackest that I would ever visible on a cold one. It was as though he hadn't fed, considering that I closing noticed him. Bella, he sighed once more, his eyes glazed over with remedy and moved forwards to maintain me, however I shook my head dumbly in disbelief before transferring returned, shying away from his contact. No words have been handed between us as he just stared at me, looking immediately into my eyes as if he ought to see via me to my soul. Comfort washed his expression, but I remained frozen, not without a doubt sure about what I need to say at a second like this. He eventually determined on what to mention as he jogged my memory with a mild voice, I referred to as. Wetting my suddenly dry lips and blinking sometimes, I cleared my throat. Earlier than answering, I recognized my words had been clipped and brief and that I hated the guttural tone. What else ought to I've responded to that? I stared at him and drank in his look. His beautiful bronze locks were wild and unruly as constantly, and I recalled the instances I used to drag on it even as he kissed me, shaking off the mind. I tried to focus on something else as I decided to pay attention to his formal attire along with a white shirt, black waistcoat and black slacks, his mask drawn up onto his hair. He'd come organized, which supposed he knew in which I might been. How? I was positive to damn myself from them. He parted his lips looking to mention something but selected now not to, returning to search my eyes as if desperately in search for solutions. His eyes scanned my face, marvel in his charcoaled irises. He regarded to pass a selection on what to mention once more because he whispered, "You hang up," his tone wistful and weary, and I discovered myself blinking once more, silently wishing it was a dream. Childishly, I wrapped my fingers round myself as I discreetly pinched myself. Shit, I felt that. I recognized my mind appeared to be caught as I repeated the equal respond as earlier then. Properly proper now I wasn't precisely in the right kingdom of mind. I did not care now what to say or what to do. I realized we appeared like fools and we had been attracting interest. I stuck sight of Damon, who turned into taking off to make his way over worry, interest and a deadly glare that he dispatched to Edward sketched in his expression. Looking returned at him, I noticed his jaw clench after he followed my line of sight, and that I knew that wasn't an excellent signal. Then flickering my gaze at Edward, the first realized that final thing that must be brought directly to this warped mess was a combat forming, so I seemed returned at Edward, my waiting palm outstretched to him. Dance with me, I requested in a hasty manner, the use of the throaty voice. Bound to you, Christina Aguilera gambling. He blinked a few instances in surprise, his sight then zoned onto my hand before following what I would said and whisking me into the waltz, his palms possessively maintaining me tight to his shape. With relief, I peeked lower back at Damon. I found he had stopped and turned into leaning in opposition to the bar as he glared at Edward, after which looked at me immediately in the eye with a dubious and pained look. Rather than sympathizing, I gave him a warning look to caution him to live away. Earlier than the tears may want to fall, I turned far away from him and focused on Edward. Edward. It still appeared unreal that he changed into sincerely here right now. You really selected to dance? Edward requested incredulously. Enjoyment rang in his voice, and that I gave a small smile before it fell with the tiredness that washed via my limbs. Laying my head on his chest in defeat, I murmured, "There is plenty you do not know about me." The simple whisper slashed through my chest. Having him right here reminded me how I lied to him and his not worthy family, however with appropriate cause. He pulled returned, making me investigate his eyes once more before he whispered, "Then tell me." Without a phrase, I placed my head on his chest again, and I should sense as his chest rose and fell with the sigh he released. However, he did not urge me on as he persisted to lead our dance. I felt as his warm breath tickled my ear earlier than he whispered, "Did I point out how notably breathtakingly stunning you look?" Another small smile tugged at my lips before teasing him back, "No, you may have forgotten to say that. On the other hand, you are always stunning, Bella." His tone became in a remember of reality way, as though it was a truth in place of an opinion. It touched me, however it additionally broke me with how I was reminded of his mark on my heart. He'd been the first being that I would fallen for after Damon, and he'd been my risk of moving on till he determined I wasn't accurate enough anymore. But then why was he here? Isabel, I revealed a chunk of my true self to him. Did he already recognize who I without a doubt turned into? How could he? Would he say the same matters he become pronouncing now if he knew what I might kept from him? What? He pulled away for the second one time in question. My name isn't Bella or Isabella. He furrowed his eyebrows with confusion as he waited for the punch line. It is Isabel. The small fact discovered scraped towards my tongue, and I sighed because it felt like a small burden become lifted. From my humanity, I recalled the verse within the Bible Papa used to usually remind us of John: "The reality shall set you loose." Isabel. My name rolled off his tongue, and I studied as the creases on his forehead smoothed out and his dark eyes packed with a clear up before he ultimately spoke. "You are nonetheless the lady I fell for." He smiled with uncertainty, and that I knew he desired me to as a minimum give him an inkling of my feelings, but I could not. "You don't know me." My voice broke on the cease, and ache flashed in his eyes. "I do. I realize you." He held my gaze as though trying to send me a message. It changed into like he knew. Did he understand what I simply turned into? "I am now not the person you think I am. You fell for a facade now, not the real me." Although I knew there was some untruth in what I stated due to the fact I remember how every so often I let my real self slip up after I familiarized myself with him and his own family. He cupped my cheek, his thumb brushing my pores and skin. "I love you. Each part of you," he claimed, but I knew as soon as he knew the reality about me, he wouldn't sense as he did now. The way he held me reminded me of the way Damon I might held me, and that I ended up gasping for air as my lungs persisted to be strained with the weight of all of it crashing onto my chest. No, Edward, no longer right now. I have no electricity left in me. No strength," I pleaded in a cry, at the same time as trying to turn away from his hands and get away of the feelings that had been rushing returned as I felt the tears sting my eyes. Okay, I won't hurt you anymore," he murmured, refusing to launch me. As a substitute he pulled me near him, cradling me to his chest as he lulled me. I will not do any harm you. We had been not dancing as an alternative, truly swaying side to facet in a sluggish manner, however still we moved to the gradual music. We stayed in that embrace as he waltzed us both in circles. DPOV. I felt silly and pathetic as I waited by using the sidelines, watching the kid dance with Isabel. What become he, like 16 or something? To be sincere, I truly could not see the enchantment. I mean, he sparkled inside the sun. How gay. He checked out her in this creepy stalkerish possessive way, as though he was prepared to throw himself in the front of a teach for her. Okay, I might probably do the same element for her, but still, and what was up with the mop on his head? He does bathe right. And the pasty skin, real switch on. Plus bloodless ones have been precisely that, cold and difficult. It was like making out with a brick. Sorry to the Edward fanatics, I simply had to expose Damon's jealousy. But for some motive Isabel had fallen for him, no matter the many flaws he had. But then again, Isabel was acceptable of everyone. It turned into in her nature to just love. Just one of the many motives that I might fallen for her, and I do not care how egocentric it changed into of me. However, I would hold combating. I was no longer approximately to offer it up to a few slightly out of high college, pasty-skinned sparkly. Despite the fact that Issa hadn't stated a call, I already knew that new guy changed into Edward, the guy she had fallen for, the fellow that had broken her heart. I could see the way she was searching at him while they danced, and as plenty as I desired to storm over there and rip the guy's head off, I knew Issa would not take it too kindly, and that I couldn't threat her hating me more than she already did. I might cling on to their alternate, and was elated at first, whilst Isabel turned into distant and clipped together with her answers. However, now looking them in every other's arms become excruciating due to the fact there was not anything I should definitely do. She'd warned me, and that I should see the plead in her eyes. I tried to appreciate that, irrespective of how an awful lot it harm. I listened intently while he known as her breathtakingly lovely, which wasn't even close to justify the way it turned into undeniable that she changed into the most first-rate beauty in this international. Okay, now it gave the impression of I used to be internally competing with Edward, and even though I used to be, it didn't make the outline any less real. I know I am. You look delicious. I zoned into the voice that interrupted my mind, and following the sound, catching Stefan, who changed into on the other facet, on the steps, with a Catherine wearing a tight-clad black dress, nothing in comparison to Isabel. She become playing with Stefan's tie, and I wondered how I could have been jealous of Stefan due to her. She changed into nothing to me now. A reminiscence that needed to be destroyed. I speedy pulled out my telephone to textual content Bonnie about Catherine's arrival, and thankfully she spoke back just as hastily, because I used to be no longer within the affected person temper. She showed that they had done their part and the room was spell-locked. Crossing over to the dance floor, I reached the spinning couple, glad I had an excuse to take her far from the clutches of the boy. Nervously, I tapped Isabel on the shoulder, and she broke from her reverie to blink up at me. Catherine, I reminded, inclining my head closer to the stairs, even as ignoring the pointless boy subsequent to us, whose eyes I may want to experience were analyzing me, in all likelihood sizing me up like I would executed to him, checking out the opposition. This is Edward. Isabel tried to clean the air, and that I sighed because I failed to honestly take care of being familiar with the person baby. Edward, that is Damon, she added us, and that I seemed up to him. He shook my hand, and I used to be tempted to weigh down it. However, I noticed how closely Isabel watched us, worry sketched on her expression. The anxiety turned into so thick and tangible among the three folks. Did he see me kiss her before? Did Isabel ever tell him approximately me? Exceptional to meet a chum of Belle Isabel. He caught himself on his mistake, and she gave him a grin, seeming grateful that he turned into taking this so nicely. Now she turned to me, in all likelihood waiting for me to mention something. Holding again the attention role, I nodded earlier than replying, "Same to you, Edward." His call left a bitter taste. Quickly I dropped his hand. "Sorry to reduce this short, however me and Isabel have topics to take care of." He frowned at that and dropped his gaze to my hand, which held Isabel's, trying to pull her away from the hormonal teenager. He then checked out Isabel for affirmation, who pulled far away from me and pulled Edward to the aspect. "I need to deal with something right now." Something else. She seemed misplaced for clarification, and that I felt responsible due to the fact I might played a component in screwing along with her head. She stumbled over her subsequent phrases, and that I watched with anger as she placed a hand on his arm as though comforting him. He did not need any comforting. From what she informed me, he broke her coronary heart. "You cannot come with me, but I will meet you again later. We will speak." Her eyebrows shot up in query in the most lovable way, Her eyes have been huge. Am I able to wait here? He requested, determined much. Panic rose in her eyes before she nodded. You could wait here, she gave a weak smile, and that I don't suppose it's going to take long. A small devilish smirk sparked her lips, and that I knew she changed into considering killing Catherine. It was the playful side of her which I thought she simplest showed to me. Will you provide an explanation for later? He requested, and he or she nodded. Yeah, positive. She endured to nod together with her solution, her head shifting like a bobble head. Bye, she whispered with a crease on her brow as she mulled over something. She then turned far away from him, but his hand reached for her wrist to stop her, and I significantly desired to reduce it off. Be Isabel. She grew to become round to him, so her again was to me. I watched, straining myself with clenched fists and a taut jaw as he leaned right down to location a kiss on her forehead before whispering, be careful. As a minimum it wasn't her lips, because he would be limping domestic without his balls. I wanted to be the closing people that had touched her lips. Let us pass. I blinked when realizing she stood in front of me. She absolutely became beautiful now, not just her exterior, however, her indoors. My monetarily days became shaken as she walked around me, and that I sorted her for a 2D before catching as much as her. My palm twitched looking to maintain hers yet again, however I refrained. Questions seeped into my mind, slowly spinning me into insanity. Did he recognize who she virtually became? How did he locate her? Who could she pick? Glancing back at Edward, who was searching at us with a defeated expression which I questioned with a raised forehead, but he not noted me preserving his stare on Isabel. Unquestionably, I could see the love he had for her. He cared for her and changed into probable better for her than I was. However, I could not lose Isabel. She became simply really worth fighting for. Although I was putting myself up for failure. EPOV. My Bella. Seeing her once more lifted my spirits once more, and forgotten had been the grueling days without her. Listening to her voice once more become so gratifying, and having her now not turn me away changed into even extra remarkable. I might been doubtful over her kind attitude toward me, but she appeared to forgive her. She regarded genuinely glorious, no luminous, no extravagant, no words may want to describe just how irresistible she looked. Seeing her in the black lace get dress that clung to her curves turned into using me wild, and it become a struggle in fighting the urge to kiss her and probably do extra. I wasn't positive if I have to act like I failed to understand. Mastering the reality approximately Bella, I mean Isabel, have been something stunning. After agonizing months of not listening to her voice, I were a crazed guy as I became my bedroom upside down, and while seeing the complete destruction, decided to run far from the constricting surroundings and into the forest. I consider how my featuring had carried me in addition from our new home in Ontario, and I crossed via Ottawa and through Montreal, then Vermont, and after observed myself in New Hampshire, usually hiding in the shadows that held sanctuary from the curious human thoughts. Quickly I slowed my tempo as I neared the shoreline of Rhode Island and collapsed at the cliffs hidden within the forest, far from the bustling streets. Looking up into the celebs, I discovered myself in no manage over my movements as I reached for my cell phone, ignoring the hundreds of textual content sand calls from my circle of relatives, and started to dial the variety. My dead heart appeared to respire lifestyles because it thumped tough in my chest as I heard the dialing tone earlier than her angelic voice spoke back with a curious, and that I could locate the cheeriness of her yellow. It changed into unusual hearing her solution, the smartphone, with such happiness. Did she not leave out me? Did she even care I was gone? Alternatively, shouldn't I be glad that she had some delight in her lifestyles? She deserved that and extra. Listening to her voice showed her life, and that I sighed into blissfulness and debated on there to hang up. However, my lips were not in that favor as I mechanically breathed out, Bella. Her name leaving my lips conveniently, and it felt as though a weight had been lifted with just that launch of her name. I may want to almost believe her wide doe-like brown eyes with long lashes that might gently stroke her skin while she blinked, her plump ink lips parted as she held her phone to her ear. My creativeness conjured her in her blue pinnacle, contrasting beautifully with her creamy pale skin. I missed her giggle, looking in a trance as she threw her head back in laughter, her eyes lighting fixtures up as she explained the book she completed reading. I neglected looking her sleep, how her chest rose and fell in a nearly sensual way, or how she used to sigh my name. I omit gambling absent-mindedly with the ends of her mahogany locks twirling the strands round my hands and allowing them to cross, and then looking forward to her to observe and turn to present me her breathtaking smile. I miss her eyes, the doe-like brown eyes packed with life, however additionally clocked with hidden secrets and techniques. I missed her voice. She'd usually explain with enthusiasm about something that she'd simply study, or how she'd nervously ask to examine extra approximately what we have been. However, the factor I omit the most about her voice is hearing her say "I love you." Pictures of our memorable moments collectively had been no longer suppressed as they crammed my mind, and that I reveled in them, seeing her for the primary time, and she or he already flared my curiosity with her silent mind. Looking her sleep and sigh my name within the meadow after I told her what I used to be, and she did not run, while she first met my own family, preserving her in my arms. Our first kiss, quickly the reminiscences had been tainted with the thoughts running lower back to her birthday bloodbath, how starving absolutely everyone's eyes grew, and this then lead directly to the reminiscence of our bittersweet goodbye. The defeat in Bella's eyes as she familiar my blasphemous words, but I recall there had additionally been something else, something that I could most effective bet to be expectance. Edward, she choked it out as if it pained her to even say my call, and an underlying sob regarded to lace it which burned through my center, questioning that I was causing her ache with my absence. Bella, I said all over again with remedy in a contentment sigh of her surely recognizing of my voice. My again straightened, my nerves alert with the life in her voice as my grip on the cell phone tightened. Become she contemplating me? Did she leave out me as a great deal as I ignored her? Had she moved on? I didn't really want the solution to that. I realized no phrases have been being said, and all I may want to pay attention became how her respiration accelerated in pace, and as I sized myself up to begin my apologies, a noisy crash noise sounded earlier than the cell phone went dead, and I glanced at my screen. However, it turned into devastatingly proper. The decision had ended. She'd dangle up on me. Fast, I referred to as the number again, however, became met with the busy tone. However, I tried 3 more instances to make sure, but the same element came up. Bella, I sighed wistfully. My arms tightened on the device and that I felt it collapse below my touch. Understanding I was able to destroying it gave a feel of launch, and I discovered that the telephone turned into now a handful of broken chips and crumbled metal, and that I numbly allow the pieces slip via my hands. I had referred to as her, and she had understandably clung up onto me, but there have been something in her voice when she replied without information of who I am that referred to as me to her. It became listening to her voice that got me identifying to head after her. I wanted her. Ripping myself far away from the trunk I might been leaning on and the dampened earth beneath me, I commenced to run once more. This time I was jogging to my domestic, my Bella in Forks. My toes carried me throughout acres of land, swam many miles of the ocean, and the handiest exhaustion I felt was my weary coronary heart that mourned for the absence of Bella. However quickly I might be with her, and that reality alone pulled me, pushing me in addition. Sure, I ought to have gotten on an aircraft, but I didn't need to be across the family. But additionally, the concept of sitting on a plane doing nothing, however waiting, were ugly. I'd soon arrived again to Forks, the simplest place I might taken into consideration domestic, in 18 hours and 43 minutes. I knew this due to the fact I would been counting as I traveled. Passing the welcome to Forks signal made the whole thing extra actual, which made me gradual my tempo for a few seconds earlier than remembering my purpose of being, and started out my race another time. I stored myself hidden inside the musky shadows of forest, no longer looking to draw any attention due to the fact the ultimate aspect I wished was for the Forks students to begin discussing my return. On intuition, my direction became, and I followed the route that I was being pulled to. I continued on. My vision became a blurred inexperienced as I whizzed past, not paying attention to the environment. Pushing through the trees, my featuring halted once I was inside the clearing. Our meadow. Nothing turned into of it. The grass became dried up, the crimson freesia had died, as had the life of the meadow. Nothingness it were, as if it had in no way existed, and now I used to be on my knees, gripping on the desiccated remainings of the grass, my nails digging into the arid earth. For a few cause, I felt that I must take the blame for this too. Turning far away from the horror, I tried to erase the picture from my mind as I observed the path main again to Bella's. Her heady scent changed into masked inside the wooded area as I endured down and pain burnt, whilst remembering the ultimate time I'd been right here, but I pushed it to the again of my mind, knowing that quickly we might be reunited. As soon as the residence came into view, my run slowed to a gentle walk, my featuring no longer grazing the air, however, as an alternative, dragged on the ground and the layer of leaves. Mind had been erratic as I determined great plan of action. Trying to order myself, I came to what regarded to be a rational conclusion. I would apologize, beg for her forgiveness, on my knees if I ought to, and I might beg her to take me back, however best, if she has no longer claimed some other. Subsequently had gained the braveness however changed into met with extraordinary complaints. I may want to bear in mind how Charlie had looked at me peculiar however the whole thing grew stranger whilst he claimed to not recognize who Bella is and once I notion of it become unexpected to not see Bella struck. My desperation was using me wild and I acted as a mad guy as my anxiety grew with his constant denial of his expertise of Bella. How may want to he now not? How may want to he forget his personal daughter? It was horrifying and I notion he became crazy or perhaps I was the crazy one. Afterward all of it became extra weird after I requested around city and even searched out for antique students who additionally claimed to not recognize who Bella changed into. What become going on? Whilst the going got too tough I finished up calling Alice out of sheer desperation and she or he assured me of my sanity before explaining her unexpected bursts of visions informing her of Bella. The extraordinary factor changed into that she explained she hadn't been having any earlier than. She knowledgeable me that there have been something approximately Bella that even we did not know. I knew there had been secrets they were clean in her glazed brown eyes but something turned into chilling in Alice's voice and because of the one's phrases, they brought a journey adventure to Mystic Falls. BPOV. After a string of tiring arguments, I'd convinced Damon to head on up without me in order to give me time to collect my thoughts. I watched as he hesitantly backed away towards the main entrance but still casting wary glances at me as if in hopes that I'd call him back. Once he was completely disappeared from my view, I leaned back onto the cold hard bricks before giving in to the weakness of the limbs as I began sliding down the rigid surface allowing the weight of everything to crash down onto me, not caring about the fact I was wearing a very expensive dress though I knew I'd kick myself later. I felt so drained. My mind was once blank was now invaded with impetuous, inarticulate and erratic thoughts fleeting through my mind in a hasty speed. Each thought screamed QT me wanting to gain my attention as they all brought a mixture of emotions that drowned me further. Sobs raked through me and I shuddered in the gentle rain, tears helplessly falling dampening my cheeks as I pulled at my hair, gripping tightly at the roots before covering my eyes with my palms which permitted them to dampen with the free-falling tears. With the heightening ache in my rapid beating of my heart, it felt like the thumping of my heart pounded in my ears deafening the sounds of the distant party. What was I supposed to do? How could I even consider killing anyone at this state? I needed something to give me any amount of strength I needed to switch it all off but in order to do that, I'd have to feed. Could I go back to that ruthless monstrosity? STPOV. Catherine sauntered over to me in a short tight black dress, each step with a deliberate sway in attempt of appearing alluring. Dance with me she held out her hand. Already knowing that she'd have a threat in response, I still went for it. No was my stern answer which I knew she had probably expected. Okay, so who should I kill first? Her answer was anticipated, that I had to fight off the eye roll. Gingerly, I held out my arm waiting for, clenching my fist to stop the recoil once she locked her arm with mine. Slowly I led her towards the dancing partners and my eye caught on Isabel and Damon who were leaving but there was a bronze-haired guy who was staring intently after them to be precise staring after Isabel. Not wanting to chance Catherine seeing them, I flipped her around to me as we began to waltz on the dance floor. She pulled herself closer to me, clinging to me tightly when I didn't respond to the touch. Clearly not getting the point or maybe simply ignoring, she laid her head on my shoulder and her fingers trailed up my spine. She sighed, her cheek pressed against mine. I love this song she murmured in my ear, thickening her tone with that seductive tone she tried to pull off. When I didn't day anything, she chose to break the silence. How's Jenna? I didn't really expect her to survive that. Tell me Stefan, how does one stab oneself? Trying hard not to show my aggravation in fear of her retaliating, I sighed and looked at her. I don't want anyone getting hurt tonight I warned knowing she would get the hidden message. And I don't see why anyone should she replied innocently if you give me the moonstone. Well, you see, I don't have the moonstone on me so why don't we both go and get it I baited, the plan was already mapped out. Just as we expected, she went along with how we had planned, you go get it and I'll try not to kill anyone in the meantime. Giving a dark chuckle, I played along, my way or you don't get it. She was about to say something when a friend of Elena's interrupted us. Hey Stefan, I can find Matt any she paused when catching sight of Catherine. Oh wow Elena, you look amazing. The dress is just gorgeous, she complimented cheerfully, though I could detect a sense of jealousy. Catherine took the role of Elena. Thank you, I love your necklace, she complimented, making the teenager girl smile. Oh, but here, it's twisted. I'll get it for you. She walked behind the girl to fix the necklace, but to my horror, the girl sucked in her breath in pain as Catherine broke her spine, probably crushing in her organs including her heart. Paralyzed from the waist down, she commented, the girl gasping in her arms before kneeing her again in the back, and the girl went limp. To top it off, she pushed the girl onto me, and dead, she added. The Moonstone, Stefan. Tick-tock, she walked off, leaving me with the lifeless girl in my hands. I still couldn't comprehend how someone could be so heartless. How could I have fallen for such a creature even if I was compelled? DPOV. Leaving Isabel had been difficult, but I also needed her to know I wouldn't smother her. She didn't like being babied. If there was one thing I was certain about Isabel, it was that she didn't like feeling dependent on people, which was why I had forced myself to leave her. Stefan had called me, debriefing me of Catherine's threat of action. Of course she would have done something like that, it was just who she was. I'd told him what to do with the body and told him to meet me upstairs. I checked on the others and how the plan was going, to distract myself, but my thoughts continuously returned to Isabel and what she was doing. Was she thinking about me? Was she safe? Was she thinking about him? Tonight was the worst day to even consider killing Catherine. After everything that was happening, I couldn't help but replay the kiss that I and Isabel shared. How she fisted my hair in her dainty fingers. How her lips molded into mine, as did her body as she gave into the undeniable pull between us. But with these memories, brought the negative ones of Glitter Boy, who had spoilt the whole evening with his presence. He'd given her up. Why was he back? Making my way up the steps, I met up with Stefan. His back was to me as he stood outside the spell-locked room. He turned at my arrival and gave a tired smile. Ready, as I'll ever be, I claimed, and we both stepped into the room. Well, no turning back now, I commented, and he looked frustrated, pinching the bridge of his nose. Maybe we should just give her the Moonstone. Wide-eyed, I shook my head and gripped him by the shoulders. Stefan, this woman has ruined our lives and you want to just give up? He looked away, but I sought out to look him in the eyes. She will never stop and we have to do this, Stefan. I could see the defeat wearing away. We have to kill her tonight. My voice was stern, with an order of authority. I got your back, patting his back when he nodded. I moved to grab a drink that was set on the table. Outside, I could hear the oblivious sounds of the town's enjoyment of the party, not knowing there was a crazy murderer amongst them. She's coming, Stefan warned after his phone buzzed, so I quickly downed the drink before going to hide. I patted Stefan's shoulder on my way to hide. Show time. Slipping into the small closet, I relied on my hearing and listened as Caroline played her part well as she pretended to cry, begging for Catherine to let her go. Still in this situation, I wondered if Isabel would be turning up at any point, but quickly shook it away, trying to concentrate on the present. Grabbing the crossbow, I emerged from the small room when hearing Catherine acknowledge Stefan. You don't really think you can kill me with that, do you, Stefan? No. Stefan fingered the stake before looking up at me from behind her shoulder. I brought up the crossbow, lining it to her back as target, but he added. Time to kill a slut vampire. Without a second thought, I watched in gratification as the stake shot into the center of her back. She reached back as if she was trying to reach it, but she lost her balance with the pain numbing her. Tonight Catherine was going down. BPOV. Scaling the wall, I perched myself on the window watching as Damon and Stefan failed in attempts to stake her. Oh, save some for me, they all paused when hearing my voice. As if on instinct, I caught sight of Damon, surprise and relief in his ice blue eyes. He took off the mask, his lips parted slightly, a small furrowed crease on his forehead as he held one stake in midair aiming for Catherine. I always did love him in a suit. Catherine's eyes flickered to the stake in my hand, but before having time to react, I had thrown it and smirked as it sunk into her hip. She gasped in surprise, pulling out the stake with a groan. Stefan was quick to grasp her from behind, holding her in headlock, his grip tightened around her neck. Damon lifted the stake and it kicked in for me. This was actually happening, truly happening. Damon was actually going to kill the woman he loved for over a decade. The same thought must have been going through Catherine's eyes as she stared wide-eyed at the incoming stake, but reality hit and arrived in the form of Mr. Jeremy Gilbert bursting through the doors in a panicked frenzy. Stop. His wide eyes were wild as he looked at Catherine and at us. "Stop everything you redoing is hurting Elena," he rambled, and I watched as Stefan's hold on Catherine loosened, but what was worse was how Damon dropped the stake. "What?" His audible gasp was clear enough, ringing loudly in my ears. "Jeremy, go make sure Elena's okay," Stefan reminded the silly boy still watching us. He finally kicked into gear and ran back towards the party. I jumped off the window sill, breaking off a part of the wood on the window. "Strangely, that doesn't make me want to stop," I growled when looking at Catherine's smug expression, which fell when she caught how serious I was as I raised the makeshift weapon and threw all my force into it as it flew in a straight beeline towards Catherine's chest, but Stefan's hand reached out and caught the stake before it hit her. Growling in anger, I pulled at the leg of the table and snapped it in half, but before I could even raise it, Damon was restraining me. "Calm down, Isabel. Come down," he whispered in my ear, but that angered me further as I spun around and kicked him in the stomach, making him crash into the force shield. But didn't he go through with the strength of the shield? I was impressed with Bonnie's handiwork. Catherine thought it was clever to cockily add, "You think you re the only ones with a witch on your side?" "We are the ones with two," Stefan remarked. With that reminder, I stared at Catherine and got into her mind, slowly erupting the flames that could only burn a vampire mentally. She crouched to the ground in agony, gripping her head in pain. Knowing that the same thing was happening to Elena only encouraged me further, but Stefan quickly intervened. "Stop, Isabel, stop. Stop it." Stefan shook me, but I ignored, still sending the flames into Catherine's mind. Stefan's shake grew more vicious. I broke from the gaze, giving him a smirk. "Wait, you have a witch on your side?" Recalling what she said. "She didn't say anything, only glaring at me from under her eyelashes." Her silence said it all, and I smirked, walking towards the door to leave. I heard someone step towards me, so I paused in mid-step before leaving the room. "Where you going?" Damon asked. With an aggravated sigh, I breathed heavily, placing a hand on the doorway to balance myself. "Keep Catherine safe seems to be what you prefer doing," I finished bitterly before walking out of the room without glancing back. DPOV. Watching as Isabel left the room, my frustration grew and I kicked the nearest thing to me, which evidently was the coffee table. It flew across the room, the glass smashing into pieces as well as the wood, and it all crashed to carpet. Turning around, my feral glare was directed to the girl that was causing all this. I crossed the room to glare at her. "This is all your fault," I growled. She just smirked, placing herself onto the sofa and crossing her legs. Angrily, I went for the alcohol and drank from the bottle. "I want the moonstone." Her voice seemed to grate my ears, and I acted on my frustration, turning around to throw the crystal bottle at her, but she artfully dodged it. "Oh look, the three of us together just like old times. The brother that loved me too much and the one that didn't love me enough," she sighed with a smile. "And the slut vampire who only loved herself," I snapped. Just being in the same room with her was gnawing on my skin. Catherine leaned over, her eyes locking with mine, and I silently questioned her when she arched her eyebrow. "What happened to you? You used to be so sweet," she probed. Shaking my head gingerly, I rolled my eyes before answering, "Oh, that Damon died a long time ago." She leaned back again, crossing her arms before smirking. "Good. He was a bore," she stated. After a moment of silence, Stefan sent me a warning glare, but I waved it off. Catherine decided the silence was another bore as she quickly broke it. "Where's the moonstone? What do you want with it?" Stefan cried, but we knew he wouldn't get anywhere with these questions. Frankly, all I wanted to do was leave this room. Too many unwanted memories were surfacing. As suspected, Catherine completely ignored the question, settling for a different route. "Does Elena enjoy you both worshipping at her altar? Better yet, how does Isabel feel about that? Are you that desperate?" "Of course she is. She had to compel someone to love her." BPOV. Once I landed on the last step, the witch connection was stronger, it was almost tangible. Scanning the room, my eyes landed on someone I least expected to be helping Catherine. She looked up at me, her eyes grew wide before she began to walk away and escape. I chased through crowds after her, following her into a deserted room, parlor-like. Bonnie came through the other side in shock to find me, while Lucy stared between us both. "A lot of power in one room," I commented. Isabel Lucy's worried expression fell, replaced with a soft glow in her smile. Her arms outstretched and I grinned before walking into her embrace. "You look good, Luce, I complimented her and she grinned. It'd been a while since I'd seen her. I remember meeting her when she was only 13 and practicing spells in the forest. I'd offered to help her and taught her about channeling. Then we crossed paths again in her college days, but that was about 5 years ago. Her hair had lengthened by 3 inches, her aura had grown stronger as a witch, and she had the whole confidence nailed down. At least she was doing okay after everything she'd lost. Remembering the other witch in the room, I turned. This is Bonnie, spinning her around with me to face the nervous teenager. Bonnie Bennett, I added, hoping she could catch the underlying meaning within the motive of using her full name. Lucy's eyes widened and she glanced at me, then quickly flickered her astonished gaze onto Bonnie, taking in her appearance. Bennett, she gasped, and I nodded in confirmation. Lucy was quiet as she took in her cousin in wonder and amazement. I was sure she could feel the force of energy that Bonnie displayed with her aura. Isabel, she's helping Catherine. She linked Elena to her, Bonnie warned me, and I resisted the urge to roll my eyes at her lack of trust. Nodding along with Bonnie's words, I kept my expression emotionless before adding in a seething voice, not under her will. Bonnie, fleeting look at the door, probably questioning herself if she should exit, but then looked back to us, still vigilant. Give her the moonstone, Bonnie, I instructed in a demanding tone that warned her to not doubt me. Being Bonnie made her stubborn as she shook her head in refusal. Trust me, me and Lucy both said, and I looked over to her to see the complete honesty in her eyes, but she ignored my presence at the moment, her eyes fixed on her cousin, her family. Bonnie continued to be obstinate, but I could see her resolve crumble. I can see anyone helping Catherine as a danger to Elena. Her loyalty was truly amazing. Couldn't understand why, but I would respect it. I admired it. Lucy let go of me and walked cautiously towards Bonnie, who looked like a deer caught in headlights as she took a guarded, stumbled step backwards. That didn't stop Lucy, who quickly reached for Bonnie's arm before taking her hands in hers, so Bonnie could read her. Lights flickered in the room and a breeze blew around the room. The connection had strengthened, humming around us that I could feel it prickle my skin. Trust me, Lucy whispered. XX few minutes later, XX. After resolving a plan with Lucy, I made my way to wait at the top of the stairs. No doubt she'd know something was up if I voluntarily offered the moonstone, so I was keeping myself out of her sight, instead lounging downstairs, close to the staircase. Pushing back the raging thoughts of Edward being near and the Damon simply being upstairs, I wandered around trying to occupy myself with something else. I looked at the various paintings on the wall briefly, but stopped on a familiar painting. I'd seen it before. Looking closely, I caught the graved writing, Romeo and Juliet, Sir Frank Dixie, 1892. I studied the ease in the watercolors before taking in the whole painting as a whole. Two people deluded with love. That's what I always got from Romeo and Juliet. First he loves Rosalind, but then sets his eyes on Juliet and declared his love for her. In my opinion, Romeo never knew love, just fixated on the idea of love. Then it gets worse as they both die. For the other, Romeo and Juliet was a tragedy, not a love story. With a frustrated growl, I downed the rest of the drink, my glare still casted on the offending painting that withheld the deluded thought of love. Not a romantic A chill ran down my spine as I prevented myself from gripping the glass too tight when hearing the familiar husky tone. Warily, I turned around to meet the inevitable. But of course, there he stood in his navy suit with a black shirt with 2 undone buttons and no tie, a silver mask. Fucking J. This was most definitely not my day. The painting, he clarified, although I already knew what he was talking about, but my mind was taking a reeling with the whole mess rivaling in my mind. Fuck, I was not cut out for this shit. I thought most girls loved the whole I'd die for you too, he added smoothly, the luster in his eyes. I needed a drink, no, the whole bottle. I am not like most girls, I sighed. He looked me from my head to my toe before landing on my face with a smirk. No, you are not, he complimented. Maybe I should go with it, just fuck it all and leave with him. That would be the easier option, but I promised myself I wouldn't do this to him. He deserved way better than a confused, fucked up vampire that just used him for sex. I better go. My boyfriend is probably looking for me, I told him, and had to watch as the mischievous gleam fled from his eyes. It was nice meeting you, Jay. Wait, he grabbed my arm and I startlingly looked at him with surprise. How did you know my name? Shit. Now realizing my slip up, I tried to think of a good answer without raising suspicion. How do I know his name? How do I know his name? It's Mystic Falls. Small towns and all, I answered nonchalantly, happy that my panic wasn't noticed. Seems you have me at a disadvantage cause I don't know yours. Sighing from the exhaustion, I gave in to compelling him, listen Jay, you want nothing to do with me. Forget this ever happened. You don't want me and you will ignore me every time you see me. His pupils dilated before he blinked at me and walked away. What am I going to do? Keeping everything T-Bay was gradually raising to be more difficult as my walls faltered, wanting to break down. I had thought about feeding but decided against it, which made the whole objective for this night. My rampant thoughts were broken when my heightened hearing, zoned in on what sounded like glass, smashed loudly, but everyone else in the room was oblivious to the sound. I assumed someone had dropped something, but before taking another step away from the staircase, I paused when hearing Damon's angered voice drive this stake right through your heart. The resentment burning in his tone startled me out of my own anger. Did he attempt to kill her? Why would he do that when he had been so resistant to do it before? Few slow footsteps sounded from upstairs. When did you get so hot? I heard Catherine's childish giggle and my fingers dug into the wood of the banister, crushing bits of it under my touch. Realizing my mistake, I quickly glanced around, happy when no one was paying attention to me, before wiping away the splinters in my hand. Finally I could hear the footsteps with a rhythmic beat of Lucy's heels clacking to the doorway. Catherine, the spell's been broken. She played her part well and knew it had been a good choice to trusting her. She had a good heart, but like the rest of the witches ended up being pulled into the world of vampires. You're free to leave, she finished. A shuffling of some sort took place before I heard Catherine's voice again, accompanied with her slow steps. Thank God, she sighed. I smirked, knowing she was taking the bait. Lucy wanted to hear the words, so she pressed on, lengthening the tension. Once I had this over, my debt to you is paid. Fine, okay, she hastily replied, stepping closer, and my smirk grew wider. In victory, I grabbed a flute filled with champagne from the passing waiter. You don't want to do that, I heard Stefan worry. Ye of so little faith, did they really expect me to have abandoned them? I didn't have to wait long as I heard the marvelous sounds of Catherine's air being restricted, causing her to choke as she landed on the floor. Sounded morbid, but I didn't give a fuck. She needed to be taken down a step and realized that she can have everything. With a victorious smile, I sauntered up the steps onto the second floor, to catch the sight for myself, and true to her word, Catherine was there, sprawled on the floor, her veins bulging, her limbs being attacked with the compressed feeling in her muscles. Well, you wanted the moonstone, didn't you? I chuckled at her. I probably sounded like bitch, but let me enjoy this, will you? Kneeling next to her, I patted her cheek as I gave a sigh. Be careful what you wish for. I stood back, the devilish smirk never leaving my face, before turning to gratify Lucy. Thank you, I smiled. You're welcome. She turned away to leave, but I called her back. Talk to Bonnie. She has no one else. It was more of a request than a demand. Neither do you, she replied in a pitiful voice. Fighting off the aggravation, I sighed in defeat. Just talk to her. She got the message and gave a nod before putting the mask back on and blowing me kiss. See y'all, Luce, I waved. I'll be back, she promised, but then returned the wave. Turning back around, I glanced at the tranquil Catherine. Her color had faded, replaced with a more ashen complexion. Her parted lips had paled. She didn't seem like such a bitch now that she was unconscious. Bending down to her, I was about to pick up the moonstone, but remembered the charm we'd put on it, so I stood back up to look at the surprised and curious Salvatore brothers, but avoided looking at Damon, instead settling at Stefan. We charmed the moonstone and the stagnant energy was transferred to Catherine. She is now unconscious, but it'll only last for an hour to the maximum. Right now we need to get her in the car so we can trap her in the tomb which has been charmed. So she's not dead? He asked. No, just comatose, I replied. We have to hurry. Stefan was alert as he rushed out the room. I'll get the car, he informed. Fuck, he just had to leave me and Damon here. I thought he'd at least get the message that I didn't want to deal with this tonight. Now Stefan was gone, I cast my eyes on where he'd just left before hearing Damon's footsteps near me, and I thought he'd pick Catherine off the floor, but instead he stopped in front of me. I felt my body buzz with anticipation to have his radiating heat burn onto mine. My fingertips prickled with need to hold his hand, but my lips tingled yearning with the desire of his lips again. Kiss me, is that what I wanted? Please look at me, he pleaded in a gentle whisper, but a sense of authority and demand captured his voice. Nervously, I reluctantly brought my head up, staring into the soulful yet anguished blue eyes. His pain pierced mine, mounting on to the walls I had tried building. He confidently placed a warm palm on my cheek, cupping my jaw, his thumb massaging circled onto the skin, leaving a blaze on my skin. "I can't stop thinking about that kiss," he whispered, and my breath caught as I moved close unwillingly and meted into him. "I really want to kiss you now," he added, and it seemed as though he was fighting that buried desire. "Kiss me, kiss me, kiss me, but I couldn't do that to you. Not now," he whispered, dropping his hand to his side, clenching it into a fist. Why was he holding back? "Kiss me, take me, Damon. Yarentufininghting. Maybe he'd given up." He bent and threw Catherine over his shoulder recklessly, and I almost broke in a smile. I missed his touch, him being close to me. He turned away from me, heading for the door, and I tried to make sense of his words. "Just remember, Isabel." He captured my attention once more, and I eagerly turned to him, waiting for him to kiss me again, but was only met with battle in his eyes as he added in a whisper, "I am always fighting for you," and with that he left the room. BPOV. After Damon left, I dazedly stumbled down the steps, my hands fisting the side of my get dressed, lifting up to save you, me tripping even though I'd opted for communicate rather than heels. My mind changed into someplace else, which turned into why I failed to even see the man or woman in front of me, and I landed on their chest. Knowing who I would land it on from the honeysuckle scent, I sighed in defeat and looked up at his burning golden eyes. Worry infiltrated his expression as he steadied me. "I see that gravity still does not believe you," he attempted to lighten the temper with a causal snort. Shaking the fog away from my mind, I rumbled over my apology. "I am sorry, so sorry. I lost song of time and forgot you had been right here," I confessed, the weary feeling overtaking. My mind had gone clean after Damon had left, and I wasn't sure what my subsequent past changed into. Edward brought me out of the trance I was dazing in. "You okay?" he requested, the fear turning into greater prominent within the creases forming on his brow. His eyes were nevertheless pitch black, even though they'd hardened nearly like pebbles. I wasn't capable of stop the sob that fell from my lips as I spoke back with a shake of my head. Edward became alert as he pulled me into his palms. I allowed the tears fall now and reciprocated as my fingers wrapped round his taut muscular tissues. His icy temperature seemed to calm me as I buried my head into his chest. He soothed me, stroking my hair, whispering pointless assurances in his velvety voice. His lips placed next to my ear could occasionally linger to graze my jawline. His icy breath prickling my skin, I may want to feel my hairs arise alert from the gesture. Here I was sobbing into my ex's hands at the same time as contemplating every other man. This changed into beyond messed up, and all I without a doubt wanted right now turned into to have my mother here. She'd realize what to do, she always did. Using the small amount of energy left in me, I started out to mentally push all of it away, to save you falling into the black hole that would take the shape of sleep. Silently, my thoughts called for the spirits that have been supposed to be my sisters, however they couldn't help me on this. The tedious weight of it all crumbled upon me, dropping my balance as I wavered from flailing limbs before sinking into his readied arms. This time, I failed to push it away. I allowed the wave of emotions overwhelm me, my knees buckled from the intensity of the complete night and its instances. Happily, Edward stuck me earlier than I landed at the floor, his fingers tucked beneath my knees as he hoisted me up to his chest. Pathetically, I fisted his shirt, clinging to him as he carried us both out of the room, pushing through the curious gazes from the parting crowd. Having someone become better than having no one, and I don't think I could cope with a night time of being on my own. Numbness iced up my limbs and nerves as I remained devoid of emotion in his hands. Life completely escaped me as her cradled me, however the sobs subdued, leaving the soundless tears. Why could not I experience? DPOV. Catherine remained immobile in my arms. It turned into like I used to be keeping the trophy, the proof of the small victory, however as soon as excessive spirits have been overwhelmed and my head became reeling into turmoil. Recollections of the previous minutes in which I had the possibility to kiss Bella flashed throughout my thoughts, and I desperately fought the urge to kill a person just due to the fact I would wasted risk, however with excellent reason. I would performed it due to the fact I knew Isabel the war in her mind turned into so clean in her eyes and that I couldn't upload directly to that by complicating her in addition. My want changed into simplest to guard her, and if I kissed her once more, that can have ended up complicating things more. What becomes she doing now? Changed into she with him. Combating for her changed into concluding to be tough, however I knew I couldn't forestall. I'd fight till she asked me no longer to, till she claimed her preference to be the young man baby. Isabel wasn't the type of Gino lady which you simply let move without problems. Did she love me greater? As a great deal as I tried to ignore that question, it turned into a repeated echo in my mind. There was a sort of familiarity whilst she had danced with him, and despite the fact that she might deny it, I ought to see it in her eyes that there was a few kind of comfort she discovered in him, and that she did keep robust feelings of him. I just was hoping that it wasn't love. The use of the back door, I slipped away, clear from the gang to wherein Stefan had parked the car. He began drumming his fingers on the wheel but paused while catching my yes. Quickly I flashed over to the automobile and threw Catherine in the lower back, and without casting a second look I shut the trunk's door before strolling to the passenger seat. UK. Stefan requested, manifestly catching onto my irritable temper as soon as I used to be sat on the seat, my balled-up fists on both aspects of me as I glared at the dashboard. I ought to sense the fury intensify, and the space inside the car appeared to shut in onto me. Respiration even have become hard that I needed to suck inside the air via my mouth. Slamming the door, I ran a give up my face, before angrily lashing out on the building rage as I punched a dent onto the dashboard with a growl. Sighing deeply, I attempted to calm myself, just pressure growling the command. Fortuitously, Stefan had more sense than to start to query me for brother bonding due to the fact that should become out of the question right now. Searching down, I gripped at my hair with the hastening mind that not handiest accelerated in velocity as they fleeted in my thoughts, however additionally grew in volume, deafening the sense and reasoning in me. All I had to think proper now changed into the reality that we might defeated Catherine. BPOV. I could not consider how we might gotten to Mrs. Flower's cottage, however right here we were. I was nonetheless in Edward's hands at the same time as he changed into slowly rocking me at the same time as sat on my bed. There were no greater tears, no greater sobs, and my thoughts end up non-existence as I fell deeper into the nothingness. Edward knew this, but he saved rocking me, comforting me, however none of his mild touches did anything. I was nonetheless numb. It became then, I realized he changed into still saying some things, so my curiosity overtook and I paid interest to the phrases, hoping that they had spark lifestyles into me. I am here, my love. I am continually right here regardless of what. You are never by myself. His voice was calm, tranquil, and every phrase have become embedded into my thoughts, engraved into my thought as they started on a regular loop. Edward became here, and that I wasn't alone. He turned into here, continually. Freeing my preserve on his t-shirt, I pulled away from him, ignoring his advances to reach for me. Always as a long term, I muttered below a sigh. Shifting throughout the room, I rested my hands at the desk, my fingernails dug into the wood. Searching up at the conceitedness desk, I stared into my worn-out eyes, my smeary eyeshadow need to vague on with water resistant. My haystack of a hair tangled at the messy pile on my head. Fuck. Appearance. Edward chose to interrupt, stunning. You usually do. His words had been honest and I knew he supposed them, but how I may want to I accept as true with them. Glancing at him from the replicate, I was met with his severe and ardent emption blazing in his eyes. Honesty laced in his eyes as he captivated my stare. Fast breaking the relationship, I looked down at my hands gripping the timber. You need to feed, remembering to remind him. I heard him sigh from at the back of me before he ultimately responded, I am able to. Just not right now. I may want to sense the burn of his gaze skilled onto my returned. Pretending to be detached, I straightened my posture before attaining in the back of me and knocking down the zip to exchange into something extra secure. A part of my thoughts informed me that I need to care approximately being uncovered to him, however I used to be far from worrying. Edward grew wary as he landed his concerned eyes onto mine, taking in my movements. What are you doing? His words were a stammer, broken syllables in his frightened tone. Rolling my eyes, I carried on with the mission. Starting up my dress, I responded causally, holding within the chuckle effervescent to my lips after I noticed him in battle of trying to argue, but alternatively, he shifted his weight on the mattress so he grew to become around giving me privacy. As a minimum he did not argue, plus changed into grateful for his gentlemanly appreciate for me. Beneath the get dressed, I'd worn a black lace corset with matching undies and a black lace garter. I did not plan for everyone to look me in this, but every so often the attractive beneath clothes simply boosted your confidence and made you sense attractive. As the get dressed dropped into a pool at my feet, I stepped out, my featuring touchdown softly on the carpeted ground. I rifled through my drawers for my pajamas, however remembered that I hadn't unpacked whatever, understanding my situation turned into most effective temporary. The whole lot become in my duffel bag, which was consequently at Edward's feet. With an internal groan, I tried to be quiet as I moved next to him and on the bed to pick up the duffel bag. Listening to Edward's gasp, I became to discover his eyes skilled on my half-bare frame. His eyes wandered on every a part of my frame, and that I felt more exposed below his hungry stare. A possessive growl escaped his lifted lips. Edward, his call became a tremble on my lips as I held a hand out to touch him. Now, not expecting his reaction, I used to be surprised while he grabbed me and threw me on the bed with him hovering over me in much less than a second. His lustful gaze deepened in his eyes as he almost caressed my bare skin along with his severe stare. "I need you so awful." His voice had changed, dropping the velvet tone and now laced with a guttural throaty sound. His phrases have been proven proper as he pressed down on me, his erection prominent on my thigh. His arms trailed up my thigh earlier than cupping the again of my thigh to affix it over his. My breathing grew labored as did his, both our chests pressed towards each different and his face handiest inches from mine. "You are too impossible to resist for your own proper," he stated, remaining the space to location his lips onto mine, but I driven him, rolling far from him as I sat on the threshold of the mattress. "Why are you doing this to me?" The phrases scraped my tongue with the gritted tone. I ought to feel tears springing to my eyes as I avoided his stare and education my eyes at the stiles at the carpet. His eyes reflected the fatigue that I used to be succumbing to, although his also held an alerted fear as he scrutinized my each flow as though I was a few type of ticking bomb. "Doing what? What am I doing to you?" he rambled unexpectedly, in search for an answer. Pulling at my hair from the roots, I growled before releasing them to take a look at him, this gesturing to the each of us. "You inform me you like me no matter what and that you'll by no means depart. First impediment comes alongside and you % up and leave. And now you are back in Mystic Falls, none the much less claiming you again for me." I was almost begging for him to say he hates him. For a few purpose I needed him to reject me. I desired him to it's what I used to be used to anyway, and it turned into easier than having the load of confusing thoughts weighing me down. Exasperatedly, he sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. "I am lower back for you. Bella, I like you," he confessed. His phrases held the reality, and I knew better than to doubt the sincerity glowing in his darkish eyes. Without questioning, I fast corrected him. "It is Isabel." Become my murmur as I solid my glance to the carpet, looking how my featuring curl inside the fur. The soft rug turned into comforting on the soles of my featuring, almost soothing. "Isabel, Isabella the first to not care. All you need to realize is that I like you. Usually have and continually will," and it changed into because of that. He seemed conflicted on the way to phrase his words, the battle gambling in his eyes. "I left due to the fact I notion I was protective you," he finished. Snapping my eyes far away from the constant gaze I had at the carpet, I allowed my fury to be uncovered in my capabilities as I growled, "Shielding me." Worry sparked in his eyes earlier than he composed himself and flippantly explained. "Whilst just when all of it passed off, I knew you failed to belong in my international. I desired you to have a normal human life." His lips tumbled over the phrases. "And now," my phrases had been bitter as I spat them out, "why failed to you simply stay away?" The anger erased rather changed with a depression tone. "I concept I should do it. I thought if I locked myself away, nothing would ring a bell in me of you that might explain why he hadn't fed. However, your absence didn't help, and being in a room alone left with my thoughts which have been a constant loop round you. The way you smile, your snigger, your hair, lifestyles to your eyes, your touch, your kiss." He appeared to have fallen into a trance as he spoke. "It were given too much, so I went running to distract myself. I had to escape earlier than giving in. So why did you call me? I concept if I should just pay attention you voice." He drifted off into his mind again, glazed eyes staring into mine. "It would be enough, but I don't know." He looked down, fisting his hair in anger. "I was in worry that he'd rip it off. Just listening to you or saying my call once more." He sighed with a lazy smile. He stood from the mattress, which brought about it to creak, but he changed into beyond being concerned. He crossed over to me and cupped my cheek, forcing me to inspect his eyes. I still love you. I shook my head to loosen his hold on my jaw. You loved Bella. Allow me inform you about Isabel. She is a witch and a vampire. She is not a virgin really. She had intercourse with a man only a few days in the past. She drank human blood only for the laugh of it. She has killed over 100 human beings, both vampires and people. She has. Isabel's eyes miled up whilst she talks about classics. She enjoys listening to the piano and in fact fell in love with the lullaby I wrote for her. She bites her lip and performs together with her hair whilst she is fearful. Her smile makes my frozen heart bypass a beat. She has got the entire global staring, but she is oblivious to it. These days I learnt, Isabel can dance surely properly. I learnt that she is bearing greater than she will cope with, and I learnt that Isabel is unhappy, very unhappy. He finished, his thumb sweeping over my cheek to wipe away the escaping tear. He turned into so mild with me. Shaking my head to refuse his honest phrases, I sighed in a low mumble. However, there's a lot more. He changed into deluded. He needed to be. He could not simply claim to know me whilst there has been in order that a good deal more. His eyes lit up dimly and with a small smile, he argued, like I said, always right here, he vowed, squeezing my fingers. Come, returned with me, Isabel, he begged, pleading with me. He desired me, he loved me, even understanding I'd put on a facade mendacity now not best to him but to his own family. He were not worthy of my cruelty, and as opposed to berating me, he had come lower back for me. What approximately the whole thing you just learnt approximately me, I attempted to make him see, feel, to look that I was not worthy of him, of his love. For some purpose, I wished his anger, but I was so conflicted as his proclamation delivered the emotions of being desired needed even. He shook his head, mirroring my preceding movements. Greedy my cheek into his arms, he stared into my eyes as he continued our conflict. I do not care. I fell for you, all of you, and that sort of love simply does not depart because of a few errors. The sternness in his tone implied that his fact. He could not, he shouldn't. I constantly refused the phrases, however they became etched in my brain. I tried once again to divert his intentions, however. He interrupted as soon as I started my dispute. No buts, Isabel. I love you. He brushed a candy kiss on my lips, so short it changed into only a graze on my lips. The buried lust appeared to upward push once more, sparkling in his eyes. Breathing deeply as I used to be, caught in surprise with the aid of his kiss. Parting my lips to say, what might I say? I didn't have something else to mention. Reputedly Edward did, because he took my face into his arms and stroked my cheek. In short, he placed some other sweet butterfly kiss onto my lips, and after I concept to open my eyes, his lips lingered earlier than he captured mine again, extra pressing and demanding as his tongue lipped into my mouth in exploration. His fingers moved from my jaw to wrap round my waist, pulling me to him. His marble frame burnt me as it pressed up on me, and his fingers trailed right down to graze my again beneath my top. Something drove me to reply, and my hands fisting his hair, I fought for the spark and started to pull at the hem of his blouse, roughly ripping on the shirt, making the buttons pop off, scattering to the floor. Desperately, I grabbed at his muscle groups, wanting him to ignite my body like he used to. He failed to pull, returned, or push me away like he used to. Rather, the fire flared as he driven me onto the wall, hitching my leg around his thigh. His fevered lips were hot round mine earlier than shifting down to my shoulders to vicinity, open-mouthed kisses on my neck. It became frantic, impulsive, frenzied and very volatile, but my frame seemed to suppose otherwise as my hands reached for his belt. Pulling on the buckle while ignoring the inaudible scream for me to prevent, I was in good fortune as Edward did proper by way of the both folks. He reached down to my palms, gently took preserve of my wrists to forestall me. "When no, we cannot," he gasped out in quick breaths. I appeared up to satisfy his guilty gaze but lust-crammed eyes. "I am sorry," he apologized. No, it is okay," I smiled. It sincerely turned into he de-executed the right aspect. "You're right. We both need a while." He gave a mild smile and cupped my cheek. I leaned into his palm, letting the coldness of his skin to chill my cheek. Picking up our entwined hands, I dropped feathery light kisses on his knuckles. "Take all of the time you want. In any case, we do have eternity," he joked. He leaned in closer and I closed my eyes as he leaned in to graze his nostril up my jawline before resting his cheek on mine to whisper softly, "Come back to me," then delivered a quick butterfly kiss on my lips, and when my eyes fluttered open, a gust of wind blew, the breeze wafted through my hair and that I regarded as much as the window where Edward had left. In his absence, I searched the room, my eyes touched down at the envelope on the desk. Going for walks to the table, I picked up the beige envelope with trembling arms, slowly establishing the flap delicately. Dearest liked Isabel, Isabel, I didn't assume I may want to love your call anymore, however I stand corrected. After gaining knowledge of everything about you, not anything seems to have modified. My feelings genuinely regarded to have grown stronger. Your true self appears to be even more potent, greater worrying and with an extra stunning soul. At the same time as I used to be with you, I wished to unveil the buried secrets and techniques that I should see you kept on your dark eyes. And now I know, I sense I feel closer to you. I love Isabella, Bella and Isabel. I hope they love me too. Your pricey Edward, DPOV. Slumber slowly faded with the arrival of the morning, but I kept my eyes closed, reveling in the simple bliss of having darkness surround me. Complete silence where no worries clouded my mind and life simply waited for you to wake up. Eventually a blurred image merged from the darkness and I watched in fascination as the grainy picture gradually found its clarity. There stood Isabel, her newly burgundy locks waved down past her shoulders, her beautiful pale skin contrasting with the red-stained lips. She smiled at me slightly before ducking her head and biting her lip. As I reached for her, the darkness took her and I felt her name escape my lips before I gave up with a groan and finally rising from the bed. Nothing I did erased her from my thoughts, not that I even wanted her to be wiped away. Isabel consumed me, even when she wasn't here. Why couldn't she see how much I loved her? Sitting on the edge of the bed, my head buried in my hands, I sighed deeply, trying to calm the dull ache in my chest. Exhaling through my mouth, I wiped a hand over my face before looking up. The empty Scotch bottle sat on my bedside table caught my eye and last night's hazy memories returned. The masquerade Isabel Catherine's warning Isabel drinking Isabel which lead to more drinking. Pushing up from the bed, I began my way to the bathroom wanting to forget about it all even temporarily. That shit hurt so much, I just needed to get away from it. Once I was in the bathroom, I saw my distorted reflection in the mirror. Dark circles under my glassy eyes, creases crowded my forehead and it reminded me of my brother's face. Splashing water onto my face, I wiped my eyes trying to get rid of the reflection. I repeated the actions 3 times before looking back up. Fuck, I muttered, gripping the counter for balance. This is not how I thought it would all go. Instead of drawing Isabel in, I kept pushing her further away. Everything everyone said about me was true. I was a fuck up. Isabel was always the one who understood me, who kept me in level. I craved her, needed her, and sitting here feeling sorry for myself wouldn't accomplish anything. Pushing away from the counter, I shook off the burden trying to clear my head. I was going to get Isabel back. I was going to fight harder, wasn't sure how, but I would. Switching on the shower, I waited for it to heat up before pacing the floor. The cold tiles were almost calming as they cooled the soles of my feet with each hurried step. I became easily drawn back into my thoughts of Isabel as I wondered what she was doing. If she was having breakfast now. If she was still dressed in her cute tank top and shorts, maybe make that a cold shower. Stripping off last night's dress shirt and unbuckling my trousers, my actions were halted when Stefan busted through my bedroom door, in a frantic state. Damon, Damon, he called. I buttoned up the trousers quickly before going out to question his worry. Stefan was always in a bad mood. I wonder what it is this time that's got him hectic. Only one answer to that, Elena. I am here. I strolled to my bedroom, leaving the water still running, the towel still in my hand. My eyes landed on Stefan, who held wild eyes as he searched the room before meeting my stare. He was still in yesterday's attire, although he'd lost the coat and the tie. His hair was messier than usual and more creases crowded his forehead. Elena, she's gone, he explained in a frantic rush, the phone still glued to his ear and I could hear the dialing tone before it went to voicemail. Aggravated, he turned off the call and tried again as he paced my floor. Taking in the new tidbit of info, I dropped the towel on my bed, finally alert. What do you mean she's gone? The girl was nothing but trouble gone. Where could she have gone? She wouldn't just up and leave her family knowing there were vampires lurking, so that only meant someone had taken her. What else would I mean, Damon? Stefan questioned in a growl as he stabbed at the end call again. This time he didn't try again. Instead he tried to control himself but gripped his hair roots, then ran a hand over his face as he sunk onto my bed, his head in his hands while his knee jumped. Have you searched everywhere? The stupidity in my words was already out before I could stop them. Of course he would have searched, this was his Elena after all. Stefan stood up abruptly to glare at me before breathing in to apparently calm himself. The feral look never left his eyes though. Yeah, I looked everywhere but Jeremy said she didn't make it home last night. That meant someone must have gotten her after the masquerade last night. We need Bonnie, Stefan decided and took out his phone, dialing the Bennett number as he descended from my room. Before I could catch myself, I immediately said the first thing that jumped into mind. And Isabel, sure, it was selfish for me to use this opportunity to see Issa again, but I had to use all that I could. Never said I'd fight fair. Rushing across the room, I picked up my phone from the stand and dialed Isabel's number with anticipation but also fear of her reaction. Saving Catherine or Elena wasn't exactly her hobby. Impatiently, I rapped my fingers on the table as I waited, listening to the dialing tone. Just as I was about to hang up, I heard her pick up the phone. Hey, she breathed. It sounded like a relieved sigh. Was she happy that I called? A smile graced my lips. I was grinning over the phone like a fool in love. Not able to help myself, I replied cockily, hey beauty. Salvatore Sweetness. Her response made me laugh lightheartedly over the phone, remembering her old nickname for me. What's up? She sounded lighter, happier. What could have happened last night to raise her spirits? Maybe she turned off again. The thought made me wince. Me. Someone who turned to the switch for over 100 years. Shit, I'd almost forgotten what was happening. Elena's gone missing, I replied timidly. Knowing Isabel, I could imagine her gritting her teeth or pushing her hair back with her slender fingers as she tried to calm her frustrations. I was about to say something but was interrupted. Belle. A girl. What girl was this talking to Isabel? A witch perhaps. She must know Isabel well to call her by a nickname. But just as was about to ask, I was then disrupted again. What's wrong? That wasn't Bella, it was that man child. What was he doing at her house at this time? Why was he there? Did they, Isabel, be there in 10? She answered sharply, clearly not ready to answer what we both knew the question was. Before I could argue and demand answers, she cut me off. What the fuck? I noted that she hadn't clarified whether she was coming alone. Running both palms over my face, I then threw the phone on the bed before going into the bathroom. I needed a distraction, something, anything, instead of the images of Isabel in Loverboy's arms, his fingers trailing all over her, his lips on my Isabel fuck. Dropping the trousers and boxers I was wearing, I rushed under the showerhead and allowed the thoughts to melt away into the drain with the spray of the hot water. Resting back onto the tiles, I allowed the water to cascade down my body. Then I moved my thoughts into a mechanical, systematic way of how I should shower. Having this practical would help sidetrack me. Just concentrate on washing my hair, just concentrating on how scalding the water was, just concentrate on the tangled limbs, fevered kisses, passionate embraces. With a growl, I shut off the water and stepped out to wrap my white towel around my waist. Making my way back to the mirror, I wasn't surprised to see the tired expression had gotten worse. My face looked almost ashen, like when humans are in shock. Tearing my eyes away from my disfigured reflection, I padded back into my room, freezing when I heard the voices coming from downstairs. I could hear the shuffles of feet before Isabel's bells-like voice echoed through the house. How long has she been gone? She did sound concerned. I know she's acting like she hates Elena, but she still cares for her safety. It was just who she was. Jeremy says he hasn't seen her from the masquerade, Stefan replied in a somber tone. With the knowledge of her arrival, I quickened my pace, eager to spend more time with her. Promptly, I dried my hair in a haste, thinking of her voice. Rifling through my wardrobe, I settled on a black t-shirt and dark faded jeans, remaining barefoot for the time being. Not forgetting to spray my cologne, I needed to do everything I can to attract Isabel, plus I noticed that she sniffed me when she hugged me. As I descended the steps, I eavesdropped on their conversation. Do you think it's Catherine? Stefan asked what had previously run through my mind. Not wasting a breath, she replied, no, it's not Catherine. Taking a brief pause, there are many other people who willingly sacrifice Elena. I could hear the smirk in her voice, and as I rounded the corner, I caught sight of it myself. There she sat, a drink in one hand, even thought it was 10:20 in the morning, not that I could judge. She was in a pair of ripped skinny jeans and a gray oversized top that fell of her shoulder paired with her knee-high lace-up boots. Her hair was no longer in the curls but instead was piled upon her head, and her brown eyes were hidden in those sexy librarian red-rimmed glasses as she looked down at the grimoire, balanced on her crossed legs. But then my eyes finally noticed the arm swung behind her. She had brought the pubescent boy, who was now comfortably sat next to my Isabel, and I trained my eyes on how his fingers lingered in a caress on the nape of her exposed neck. How dare he come to my house and sit with my Isabel, and have the audacity to touch the love of my life? To say I was angry would be the understatement of the century, and seeing as he was looking at me, I hardened the glare that he met with his own predator look. Isabel looked up at him, taken back slightly before she turned to follow his line of sight, landing to me. Her doe-like brown eyes grew wider, holding a twinge of fear as she caught sight of me before she masked it with a fake smile that faltered. Hey, she breathed similarly to before. With her locked gaze, my glare was dropped, replaced with a comforting smile assuring her I wasn't about to harm her toy boy. High was my relived sigh, just seeing her erase the what's and the how's but replaced with the now here with Isabel. Man-child was forgotten. BPOV. After Edward left, sleep never claimed me, so I was on the bed simply staring at the ceiling for the past 11 hours while thinking of my next step, not that anything even added up. But when it finally hit 9:30, I heard Mrs. Flowers begin to move around, so I decided I might as well wake up and fuck up my life more. Placing myself on the bed in an upright position, I pulled my knees to my chest, resting my head onto my knees as I stare at the window across the room. Mrs. Flowers had cleared up all the glass, which made me feel guilty because she'd even gone through the trouble of boarding it up so I couldn't get cold. I do wonder if Edward had tried to watch me sleep. Sigh Edward. The kiss had replayed in my mind last night, reeling me into the scene once again. How he'd finally thrown caution to the wind and grasped me as if he craved me, touched me as if it was our last moment, kissed me as if it was his last breath. Oh, that kiss which had almost led to more, but I was beyond grateful that he stopped me. My guilt of the kiss was enough to weigh me down if I'd woken up the next day naked next to Edward. No words could fathom how fucked up this would all have turned out. Wanting a distraction, I grabbed my toiletries including my towel and made my way to the shower. Once I was there, I had a fairly quick shower using the usual strawberry shampoo to wash out the hairspray I'd used yesterday for the curls. Once I was finished, I wrapped the towel around me and made my way to my room. As I passed Mrs. Flowers' room, I could hear her moving around and whistling an unfamiliar tune. I wish I had that optimistic tone every morning. Shutting the door behind me, I walked to my duffel bag and suitcase in search for something to wear. I wasn't really in the mood for looking my best, so I settled on a simple off-the-shoulder top and my black ripped skinny jeans and opted for Converse over heels. Comfort over couture. Lathering myself up in my strawberry and raspberry scented lotion, I then dried my hair, not bothering to straighten it but instead grabbed a hairband to tie it up so it was out of my way. Slipping into the clothes, I smiled in content with the comfort they brought instead of the heavy drag of always being primped. I somehow felt more like me, more real. Without the makeup, the heels to false my height, the skimpy clothes, this was me, I guess. Knock knock, Mrs. Flowers called while giving a light rap on the door. Stretching out my legs, I scooted to the edge of the bed, pausing when glancing near the mirror where Edward had kissed me senseless. The memories of last night returned and I sighed again. Bella, Mrs. Flowers called, pulling me out of my thoughts once again. Shaking the memories away, I answered in a throaty tone, sorry, come in. The door slowly opened and I cracked a smile when she stuck her head in before finally entering. No shirtless sleepover today, she joked. Not today. We kinda over. Oh, how come? She took the opportunity to sit next to me on the bed, her hands clasped together as she stared at me with a mischievous grin. I turned to her. He had eyes for an older, prettier woman. I winked at her. Oh, you, she chuckled lightheartedly, giving my shoulder a light nudge. Relationship troubles, she guessed, and I nodded. Isn't it always, giving a light smile, but it faltered and fell back into a grimace. She sighed deeply before continuing, that Salvatore. She didn't need to finish the sentence when she caught the look on my face. Giving another sigh, She took my hands in hers before adding, "You young." Her start caught me by surprise. Young. It came out as an exclaimed laugh as I stared incredulously amused at her. "I am over 500 years old." To me, "You young," the giggle burst through. Her eyes glimmered before shaking her head. "You young in spirit and heart and you in love." She ended the sentence with a pitiful stare to which I averted my eyes to our joined hands. She was the closest thing to a mother figure I had, which was why I couldn't help but lean into her side. Instead of pulling away, she hugged me closer and began to stroke my hair just like Mama used to. "It's complicated," I sighed. With the close proximity, I could smell the fresh-baked cookies and flowers smell that masked her. It was oddly comforting and I inhaled deeper, wanting to remember this. Her fingers moved from my hair only to rub up and down my arm. "Only you can complicate it," she pushed back so she could look me in the eyes. She made it sound easy when it really wasn't. "You don't understand. He's hurt me over and over again, and now could I really burden her with my problems?" The encouragement in her eyes pushed me to go on. "And now, my ex has returned." Waiting for her to tell me what to do, her following words surprised me. "So that's who the guy downstairs is," she causally added with a pensive expression. How did I feel about this? Why was I slightly excited but also annoyed? What to do now? "Edward, he's here." Even I couldn't deny the excitement in my voice, which surprised me further. Did that mean anything? The thought of him being close brought back last night's memories. Wild bronze hair, gold eyes, gentlemanly manner to match his dashing looks. Mrs. Flowers had a wicked gleam in her eye as she explained this. "He isn't he." I sighed and pushed back the covers. I can't keep him waiting any longer. As I stood up, but before leaving, I turned to Mrs. Flowers. "Thank you." The simple words were sincere. Her comfort and her worry was much appreciated. "Don't get sappy with me, Missy," she playfully argued back. "I'll be a good elder and finish my baking and my gardening. Maybe even catch up to my stitching. Pearl 1, Pearl 2, she rambled on as she trailed down towards her bedroom. I giggled at her insanity before I too walked out of my room and nervously headed downstairs. As I hit the last step, I walked in an even slower pace towards the living room, but dug deep for hope before looking up into the lit-up living room, to meet Edward's glowing eyes. They were no longer a pitch black, but I noticed that they were now a dark gold. He fed. The simple act made me smile, taking some guilt off the burden I was balancing on my shoulders. "Thank you," I found myself sighing before crossing the room to wrap my hands around him. He knew what I meant as he didn't question but instead buried his head into my hair and inhaled, then exhaled with a relieved sigh. Pulling away, I didn't move from our close proximity as I finally greeted him. "Morning." "Very good morning," he answered with a tug of his lips. I saw him glance at something behind me and I shrugged it off as being Mrs. Flowers until I heard her. "What about us?" she asked in a whine, and I looked up at Edward in surprise, tears brimming my eyes already, and I anxiously turned around, holding in my audible gasp as I found the people I'd grown to love, even considered to be my family, was now sitting on the small flower-patterned sofa. Emmett were sat on the arm with an pleased smirk as he stared up at me. Esme was there too, but she looked nervous as I felt. Alice was sitting next to her. She reminded me so much of Christy. Just as I was about to rush over to hug her, she already made her way to me and captured me in her tight embrace. Her little body clinging to me, and I sobbed in a laugh. "Why you here?" The tears were falling now and clung to her tighter. Loving them had been real. How could you not? "I can't believe you here." I pulled back to look at her and brought her into my arms again, making her give her tinkling laugh. I'd missed that laugh. "Don't hog her all to yourself," Emmett chuckled from behind us, and I could kicked myself for almost forgetting. Pulling away from Alice, I allowed Emmett to engulf me in his bear hugs. "I'd missed this." "I missed you, sis," he whispered tenderly in my ear, and I couldn't stop the waterworks now. He finally swung me back to the ground, but it was only a matter of seconds before I launched myself to Esme, the woman I'd considered being a mother. Right now I forgot about how much they hurt me. I forgot about the anger, but concentrated on how my family was reunited, how she had been like a mother to me. How I didn't feel so alone anymore. "Mum," I couldn't help but blabber out as I stared at her through my blurred vision before she too brought me into a warm embrace. Accepting me, even my lies. That was what families did, and seeing as I'd lost one, it had been a miracle to find another. "My daughter, oh my daughter," she whispered soothingly, her fingers caressing my cheek and then rubbing my back as she held me as tightly as the rest had. "Oh, how I missed you," she admitted. My arms tightened around her neck as I held her to me, not wanting to let her go. "I missed you too." My words were a hoarse whisper. The sobs had subdued and turned into helpless ears. "I missed you so much." I pulled away to look at her like I'd done with Alice. "I can't believe you here," I chalked back on the sob. Looking at Alice, Emmett, then Esme, "All of you, I just can't believe you came this time." The sob broke through. Another round of tears shed and they all held me, including Edward. Here I was with people who loved me, all of me, and were ready to forgive me. People who cared for me as much as I cared for them, almost like a family. ELPOV. Blinking, I gazed up to the tattered plaster of the ceiling above me, as tattered as the wallpaper that was falling off the walls. A musky smell of dust and mold mingled in the atmosphere and I coughed from the unpleasant stench. Sitting up abruptly, yesterday's happenings dawned onto me. The masked man, he grabbed me and then I couldn't remember anything. Warily, I searched around the large hall full of clatters of broken pieces of wood and fallen plaster from the ceiling and walls. At least my kidnapper had been kind enough to place me on this sofa. Tough, there could be at least 1,000,000 different species of bacteria covering it. I jumped from the set and searched for an escape. The windows were boarded up and taking them down would no doubt give me away because I knew my kidnappers were for a fact vampires. Maybe I could sneak out. No sounds came from around the building. Maybe they had gone out to hunt. Maybe. The door seemed to be 40 meters away, but that was just my doubt playing with me. Determination set in me, so began to quietly tiptoe towards the only escape. Tried my hardest to avoid the obstacles of the broke shards of glass and pieces of wood which would ruin the plan for me. In a few more minutes, I got to the door and I sighed quietly in relief for having made that journey without being caught. Silently as possible, I turned the door knob, wincing with the small creak sound it made, but as I searched around, no one came, so I was encouraged further to continue. The door gave way and I thanked my guardian angel for it not being locked. Slipping though the small gap, I'd cautiously opened. I didn't lock the door, instead headed for the exit. I saw, not giving anything a second glance. When turning the handle ready to face my freedom, a hand grasped my shoulder, hauling me back. That I crashed not only on the hard wooden wall but landed myself back into the unconscious blackness. We will continue in next part.